through the storm okay. So at the Red Cross, we have people who are trying to open those caseloads and really track family members, let them use our satellite phones or long distance calling so that they can get a little bit of that certainty back.
And for those people at home watching right now, what can they try to do to help those affected by the hurricane?
So right now, for people wherever you are in the world, check in with your Red Cross or Red Crescent Society to see if you're able to donate for Hurricane Dorian relief. But another thing I would just encourage people to do is take this moment to think about what your emergency plan is. Disasters can strike anywhere. This is the moment to think about what your evacuation plan is. What would you take with you? Learn first aid so you can help your neighbors. Disasters are a tragic time, but they're also an opportunity for people to think ahead for the next time something strikes like this.
All good points. Janelle Eli from NASA, thank you so much for joining us on Cheddar, and thank you for your work out there.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back to Cheddar News. Now to the biggest stories from around the nation.
Topping the news today, the Coast Guard confirms 3 of the 4 missing crew members from a capsized cargo ship off the coast of Georgia are rescued this afternoon. The South Korean ship Golden Ray began listing badly Sunday morning. The ship was carrying cars from Georgia to Baltimore. By nightfall, the ship was on its side.
You can back off if you need it, but we're in a good position. So it's up to you.
The Coast Guard was able to rescue 20 people before a fire broke out on the ship. The missing crew members were all in the engine room. The Coast Guard released this video of the rescues. Officials say they were able to drill holes in the ship to find the location of the missing crew members.
At this point, the Coast Guard says there are no active oil spills or any other dangers to the waterway. The National Transportation Safety Board will be on scene today to try to determine what causes ship to list, then capsize. The White House is honoring the fast-acting officers who responded to 2 mass shootings last month.
These incredible patriots responded to the worst violence and most barbaric hatred with the best of American courage, character, and strength. Faced with grave and harrowing threats, the men and women standing behind us stepped forward to save the lives of their fellow Americans. Few people could have done, and even would have done, what they did.
President Trump presented the Medal of Valor to 6 officers who stopped a gunman less than a minute after he began shooting in Dayton, Ohio. Officers killed the 24-year-old suspected shooter who was wearing body armor and carrying multiple magazines of ammunition with him. The president also honored 5 officers who responded to the El Paso shooting. They were able to arrest the suspect who killed 22 people at a Walmart.
Thousands of people are trying to get out of hurricane-ravaged islands in the Bahamas as the devastating impact from Dorian continues to get worse. The death toll in the Bahamas stands at least 44 people, but that number is expected to rise dramatically. Last week, one official said everyone needs to prepare for the loss of life to be staggering. People on the ground say it looks like a bomb hit. The Bahamas Prime Minister attended a memorial service for victims over the weekend and vowed to make sure everyone gets the help they need. But some fleeing residents are being met with yet another challenge. Several hundred storm victims say they were forced off a rescue ferry headed to Florida because they did not have a visa. It turns out those people forced off of the ferry in Freeport don't have to get off the boat. You don't need a visa to travel between the U.S. and the Bahamas. The confusion came one day after another cruise ship brought 1,500 refugees to Palm Beach in a coordinated rescue effort between the U.S. and Bahamian governments. The trial of the Chinese national accused of trespassing at one of the president's Florida retreats began today after a brief postponement. Jury selection was set to begin when Zhang was reportedly brought into the courtroom wearing a prison outfit. She told the judge she could not wear civilian clothing because she was not given any undergarments. Prosecutors say 33-year-old Zhang got through several layers of security before being stopped in the lobby of the Mar-a-Lago resort back in March. The Secret Service found Zhang in possession of electronic equipment that at the time they thought contained suspicious malware. The incident happened while the president was in Florida, but he was not at the club when the woman was arrested. The feds say she bluffed her way into the club by saying she was there for a charity event. The Chinese woman is charged with making false statements to a federal officer and trespassing in a restricted area. Zhang is acting as her own lawyer. She faces 6 years in prison if convicted.
Picking where you go to college isn't always easy. If you need help deciding where to apply, U.S. News & World Report just released its annual list of best colleges. Topping the list is Princeton University, followed by Harvard, Columbia, MIT, and Yale tied for 3rd place. This list includes private and public national universities. We take the private universities out of the mix. Another top 5 emerge: University of California, Los Angeles, University of California, Berkeley, University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, University of Virginia, Georgia Institute of Technology are the top 5 public universities in that order. Ranking is based not only on academic quality, but also retention rates and social mobility.
Congress is back from recess, and some lawmakers are now reacting to one rapidly growing threat to America's youth.
Our own JD Durkin joins us live from Washington, D.C. with more. Hello, JD.
Hello to you as well, Asia and Nora. A lot of news here on Monday out of our nation's capital, some on the oversight front, some on the geopolitics front, and some on the immigration front. But here's one of the newly emerging threats that seems to be getting more alarming by the day. And one by one, Washington's big power players are taking notice. The issue is vaping. More specifically, a rash of troubling new vaping-related lung illnesses. First Lady Melania Trump on Monday taking to Twitter with this note, quote, "I am deeply concerned," she says, "about the growing epidemic of e-cigarette use in our children. We need to do all we can to protect the public from tobacco-related disease and death and prevent e-cigarettes from becoming an on-ramp to nicotine addiction for a generation of youth." The tweet Monday comes on the same day that regulators with the Food and Drug Administration are putting the $38 billion company Juul on notice. Dr. Ned Sharpless, that's the acting director of the FDA, said this in a note Monday. Take a look. Quote, "The law is clear that before marketing tobacco products for reduced risk, companies must demonstrate with scientific evidence that their specific product does in fact pose less risk or is less harmful. Juul has ignored the law and very concerningly has made some of these statements in school to our nation's youth." There's an awful lot of uncertainty out there around the troubling numbers as the issue continues to baffle many scientists and doctors. Some people have reportedly gotten sick specifically after using marijuana concentrates that reportedly were sold with high doses of vitamin E mixed in. Some victims who have fallen ill have said they've only smoked nicotine products, but as happens whenever there is a new public threat, where there's not a lot of known information outside of the big, frightening, scary headlines in full bold, Congress begins to act. At least they begin to investigate and ask questions. So lawmakers here in Washington are now more and more sounding the alarms. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib of Michigan has previously said that Juul has avoided federal advertising restrictions. And Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy of Illinois, he's quickly become one of Capitol Hill's fiercest critics of the e-cig maker. He recently urged the FDA to more closely examine the company after he says they engaged in bad faith marketing practices. And Congressman Krishnamurthy also says Juul has demonstrated clear violations of government regulations, with claims such as Juul is a totally safe alternative to smoking and that it is less harmful than tobacco. Now, as for First Lady Melania Trump, we don't very much hear from the East Wing office on specific targeted issues like this. So Asia and Nora, the fact I think that her office would call for more government enforcement, that she's raising attention to this issue, could indicate that this could be a fight that the First Lady is willing to take up in the months ahead.
Great reporting. That is JD Durkin live from Washington, D.C. Thanks, JD.
Thanks.
Passengers hoping to fly on British Airways in the next 24 hours are pretty much out of luck. The airline canceled almost every flight.
A 48-hour pilot strike forced the airline to order a worldwide ground stop to its flights. Pictures show the terminal at London's Heathrow Airport nearly deserted. When you look at the FlightAware's tracker for British Airways planes, you can see there are less than 10 flights in the air around the world right now.
British Airways says it's offered the pilots union a nearly 12% raise for pilots, but it says it's not enough. The airline has up to 850 flights per day.
It is offering travel waivers to those affected. The strike will end by Wednesday, but another is scheduled later this month. So all this could happen again. And it may be paradise when you get there, but leaving the Greek island of Mykonos will likely give you a headache.
That's right. According to Air Help, half of the flights leaving the airport in Mykonos were delayed over the summer. That's the worst in all of Europe. The airports in Athens and Santorini are not much better.
The study also looked at the performance of airports in the United States. The worst performer in terms of delays was on the East Coast.
Yep, Newark Liberty only had a 63.9% on time this past summer. Chicago O'Hare, LaGuardia, and Denver International also posted major delays.
And summer isn't over yet, but New Hampshire is looking ahead to the fall.
The reason? Because tourism is booming. The New Hampshire Tourism Department expects to welcome more than 3 million out-of-state visitors who will spend at least one night there.
And these tourists are expected to drop $1 or $2. The department estimates visitors will spend more than $3 billion across New Hampshire this fall.
With foliage views like this, it's a little surprising that fall is the state's second biggest travel season behind summer. The department's fall marketing campaign features nature activities like hiking and leaf peeping, along with dining and shopping. Leaf peeping. Austria's capital holds on to its title of the world's most livable city.
Economist Intelligence Unit looks at 5 factors to determine its annual index. Analysts say Vienna got near perfect scores in all but one of the categories. Those include stability, healthcare, culture, and environment, education, and infrastructure.
Cities in Australia, Canada, and Japan dominated. Copenhagen was the only European city to break the top 10. Several major cities like London, Paris, and New York sat much lower on the list due to higher crime rates and poor infrastructure.
Stay tuned for more Cheddar News.
We're your source for right now.
My mother ended up giving me an ultimatum, either quitting school.
The New York Stock Exchange while we got it. Yes, Polaris ringing the closing bell here on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Look, they had some pretty fancy vehicles parked outside all throughout the
expected to have at least one like really bad roommate experience because everyone has those horror stories, but I actually ended up living with my freshman year roommate for like, we still live together. So I think that college ended up being kind of calmer in some ways and a lot more exciting in other ways.
Playing college soccer at UCLA helped prepare me to play in the NWSL and the U.S. Women's National Team by playing with some of the best high school and club soccer players. 6 or 7 of the graduating seniors from UCLA actually still play in the NWSL and are starters in their respective NWSL teams today. They challenged me and helped push me to become the best player I'm capable of being. I, owe a lot to them in respect to that, and they're, quality players and people themselves, and people that I still call, some of my best friends today. So I made lifelong friends at UCLA, and I'm forever thankful for that.
I don't think many other students bat an eye when I tell them that I'm the youngest elected officer in Washington, D.C.'s history. The Advisory Neighborhood Commission system is D.C.'s lower body of the state legislature. We work on the most local form of politics. I got involved with the ANCs when I was a sophomore in college. I wasn't interested in running for office at all, especially not while I was still a student. I found out that the seat that was set aside specifically for an American University student on the commission hadn't been filled in over 2 years. Here was a seat that nobody was even bothering to take. If nobody was going to do it, then I would step in. I have been interested in politics since I was about 15. My first internship was for a gubernatorial campaign in my home state in Connecticut, and my parents had to drop me off every day at that campaign headquarters because I couldn't drive yet. I don't always feel like a commissioner. I don't always feel like an elected official. There are times that I am just a regular college student, going to classes, hanging out with my friends. I see my position as not just representing the students who live on American University's campus, but all students in general. A big part of my position is working to find those creative solutions and finding the practical solutions that might be overlooked when you're looking at the grand scheme of city planning versus this very local form of politics. Being a college student, you're already a master at juggling so many different things and communicating with so many different people and taking all these different classes. And so I think college students are pretty well suited to running for office.
I think I expected to have at least one like really bad roommate experience because everyone has those horror stories, but I actually ended up living with my freshman year roommate for like, we still live together. So I think that college ended up being kind of calmer in some ways and a lot more exciting in other ways.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Cheddar. It's been a busy day on our nation's capital with more Trump tweets, a White House briefing, and Congress back in session. Our JD Durkin joins us live from Washington, D.C. to break it all down. Hey, JD.
Hey, Hope and Brad, good to be with you here, my friends. Here's a look at a few of the top stories that we are following at this hour. First up, that's right, folks, we had a White House press briefing today. Sort of. It wasn't the press secretary of the United States, but it was on camera, and it featured Acting Customs and Border Protection Chief Mark Morgan, who essentially looked to make the argument that Mexico has not done enough to help curb the flow of illegal immigration into the United States. The White House admits that the U.S.'s neighbors to the south have taken, quote, meaningful and unprecedented steps, but that the flow of migrants is still overwhelming the system. But there is the issue of the border wall, and specifically who is going to pay for it.
As a commissioner of CBP, I don't care. That's political. That's for politicians to decide. What I can tell you as the CBP commissioner, every single mile of wall that is built, this country is more safe. Every single mile of wall that's built, it allows the Border Patrol agents to exponentially increase their capacity to do their job.
Morgan saying Monday that the goal of the White House is to build 500 miles of the border wall by the end of 2020. Next up with Congress now back on Capitol Hill, there is a renewed conversation about potential gun reform measures. On Monday, leading Democrats, led by New York Senator Chuck Schumer, called on their Republican counterparts to take up and pass H.R. 8 for expanded background checks. Democrats, of course, continue their push to pressure Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky to determine what actionable items can actually get done with an at times unpredictable president. As for the president, despite previously expressing support for tighter background checks, on Monday, Donald Trump would not commit.
Well, we're dealing with Democrats, we're dealing with Republicans, we're talking about a lot of different things having to do with, as you call it, gun control, but we are talking about a lot of different things, but at the same time, we have to protect our Second Amendment very strongly, and we will always do that.
All right, and finally, you may remember that small item from this past weekend, just a few days ago, when the president casually announced a now-canceled meeting with the Taliban at Camp David. White House officials were forced to defend the thinking behind inviting the Taliban so close to the anniversary of September 11th. But as the president told reporters at the White House just a few minutes ago, those talks are now firmly off the table.
They're dead. They're dead. As far as I'm concerned, they're dead. They thought that they had to kill people in order to put themselves in a little better negotiating position. When they did that, they killed 12 people. One happened to be a great American soldier, a wonderful young man from Puerto Rico, families from Puerto Rico. And you can't do that. You can't do that with me. So they're dead as far as I'm concerned. And we've hit the Taliban harder in the last 4 days than they've been hit in over 10 years.
The president has, of course, come under fire for the proposed talks from many Democrats and Republicans alike, including Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who said this last weekend, quote, no member of the Taliban should set foot on Camp David ever. Hope and Brad, that's a look at the top stories that we are following. Back to you both on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
All right, great stuff as always from JD, live from Washington, D.C. You can check out Cheddar Politics at 1 p.m. every Monday. Well, in other news, over in Silicon Valley, Amazon, well, actually, they're up in Washington. They're falling behind on lofty ambitions for ghost stores across the country, according to an exclusive from The Information. Joining us now to break down her article, Amazon forecast $639 million for ghost stores by 2020, but openings fall short, is Priya Anand, the reporter that we're gotten on this great story, Priya. And in your article, you actually say that Amazon Go is the company's most technically adventurous effort to upend traditional retailing. Explain why and why they're falling short.
Amazon Go is Amazon's bet that people don't want to wait in lines when they go to stores to check out. So these are their retail stores that are mostly thus far convenience store sized, and you scan your app when you walk in, then you just pick up whatever you want and then you leave. And what they're hoping to do is really change and transform that physical store retail process where people, walk in and then have to wait 20, 15 minutes in a checkout line. They think that people don't want to ultimately do that, and this is a way they can be ambitious in transforming physical retail the way they also transformed online retail.
And Priya, in terms of projected annual revenue from Amazon Go stores, they had been looking and predicting to get a mere $28 million in 2018, grow that to as much as $639 million in 2020. I mean, is the company on track for that type of expansion?
That's right. Those are the numbers that we've reported. And the company has actually fallen behind on its own projections in terms of how many stores it would like to open. So it's likely that the numbers are a little bit lower than that at this point. The company expected to open 56 stores by the end of this year, have 56 Amazon Go stores open in operation. Thus far, there are only 18 that have been announced to the public. 3 of those have not yet opened per their website, which we're told is up to date. So they haven't quite met the mark in terms of what they expected their expansion plans to look like. And that has implications on, how long it's going to take for these kinds of stores to make money and how quickly they can learn about things like what works, what doesn't work, what kinds of areas do they want to be in, what kind of format works for the stores.
Right, and in the documents that you got a hold of, speaking of locations, you cite that these locations are not even easy to find. They have to have very specific design elements, high ceilings, so that cameras can keep track of it, proximity to fulfillment centers, and then of course the population density to prove the point that this is something that's really, really useful. In the documents that you looked at, was there any ideas of how they can find these locations faster maybe? Is that sort of the crux of the problem?
Well, part of the problem is that they also don't know when they're going to potentially cannibalize a different Go location by opening another one a couple blocks away. What became clear to me in reporting out this story is that Amazon this is in an experiment phase for them. Go, while they keep opening these stores and the stores get a lot of press around them and sometimes draw tourists who are excited by, seeing a different kind of format and being in this very future forward kind of store. To Amazon, this is still an experiment. They still don't know what quite works. At certain times of day, certain stores still aren't drawing as much traffic as they hoped. Certain stores, if you walk by them in San Francisco, for example, you will notice that there's lots of traffic at peak meal hours, but otherwise only a couple people really roaming around in there. So these are all things that they're still trying to work out, which is perhaps part of why they haven't expanded as quickly as these documents showed us that they were hoping to.
Well, coupled with the risk that you also don't know how cities themselves are going to respond as well. When you had cities like Philadelphia originally that pushed back on the fact that you would have a cashless store, and Philadelphia then saying, no, we don't want this to be something that shuts out the unbanked, and we want to have a store that is more inclusive. From a city perspective, how could that impact Amazon's plans here?
Well, the other issue is, from a city perspective, they have lots of different issues they have to look at when they're trying to expand, right? It's not just the fact that some cities have been less excited that there's, there's no cash option in certain stores, or that certain areas didn't have that, and that people may be left out of that. But there are a number of things they have to consider when expanding, such as how close they are to different fulfillment centers of theirs that have, fresh assortment, what the employment situation is in that city, what the density is of that city population-wise in terms of office workers. If a city is too car-centric, there are some cities where they have thought, we don't know if these stores are going to be enough of a destination if people aren't walking by already. If they have to drive their car to get here, are people going to go? And that's a big question for them right now.
Now, we know with Uber and Lyft, they all want to automate the drivers, right? I mean, in Amazon's mind, are you seeing that to be the case, that to become more profitable on the retail front and on the grocery front, that they also have to automate these systems as well?
The thing to remember, and one thing worth noticing in our story, is these stores are quite cost intensive, even though, one might think like these stores don't have employees necessarily checking people out. That saves them money. There's a lot of overhead, though, to open up a store like this. There are cameras all over the ceiling. They're using artificial intelligence to automate the store. And there are people who need to restock those shelves still. That's still happening. They still have folks, in certain stores showing people how the technology actually works. And there's lots of overhead at corporate headquarters for these stores. So the headcount is a huge cost, actually, for these automated stores. And, one would not think that, realizing that they're cashierless,
Right.
but ultimately all the back end work that goes into that might be even more than having people there on a day-to-day basis, at least for the next couple of years. It's a big investment.
An expensive experiment, as you mentioned. Priya Anand with the first look at the financials of Amazon Go. She is a reporter at The Information. Thanks, Anand.
All right, guys, and coming up, the CDC confirming a 5th death linked to a vaping incident and related lung illness. We'll have a live report on that next.
I just hear it on the radio and then I become obsessed with it and play it until I
I think I expected to have at least one really bad roommate experience because everyone has those horror stories, but I actually ended up living with my freshman year roommate for we still live together. So I think that college ended up being kind of calmer in some ways and a lot more exciting in other ways.
Back to Cheddar, everybody. We're learning more now about the mysterious vaping-related lung illnesses sweeping the United States. Cheddar's Chloe Aiello is standing by with more. Chloe, what do we know so far?
Hey, Hope. So 5 deaths and some 450 possible illnesses have now been linked to a mysterious vaping illness that is sweeping the nation. Patients across 33 states have fallen ill, reporting similar symptoms, including shortness of breath, chest pain, nausea, vomiting, fatigue, and even fever. Symptoms developed in days or sometimes weeks after patients used nicotine or THC vaporizers. The Centers for Disease Control has cautioned e-cigarette users, many of whom fall between the ages of 18 and 24 years old, not to buy illicit vaporizers or modify existing ones. The agency has also recommended users, quote, consider not using these products while the investigation is still underway. But as it turns out, buying legally won't always guarantee a user's safety. In Oregon, a middle-aged man died after using a vape purchased legally at a cannabis dispensary. Public health officials have declined to name which specific brand or dispensary was involved. Cheddar checked in on the case with Dr. Tom Jean, Deputy State Health Officer at the Oregon Health Authority.
In this case, it was a cannabis product that this person vaped, and we're working to get any remaining product and send that to the FDA. Our case in Oregon, that individual had purchased legal products. We don't know for sure if other products or additives could have been involved.
Although many cases involved illicit cannabis vapes, a majority of those who have fallen ill also reported using a nicotine product. So neither nicotine nor THC vaping has been ruled safe at this point. Desperate for some answers, some local officials have taken things into their own hands. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo over the weekend urged New Yorkers to quit vaping until the investigation is completed, saying in part, quote, "Our health guidance is no one should be using vaping products, period." New York State's Department of Health has implicated one specific chemical, vitamin E acetate. Department officials say the common vitamin supplement has been found in all of vape products they've tested, involved in more than 30 cases that they're currently tracking. The Food and Drug Administration, however, has said that no single compound is yet to blame, but that it would be smart to avoid inhaling vitamin E acetate in any case. The CDC in a statement said patients' symptoms are consistent with chemical exposure.
Thanks for the dive in on that, Chloe. I think what would be helpful to also know is how did these illnesses seemingly fly under the radar for so many months?
Yeah, so I think in the beginning it was just kind of like a smattering of cases that seemed unrelated until doctors, clinicians, and researchers started sort of comparing their notes, and then they started recognizing some similarities. And I think with this flying under the radar, much of it has to do with the age of vapers. The demographic with companies like Juul has skewed younger and younger. I think the median age of folks that have fallen ill in this smattering of illnesses is about 19. So I think in some of these cases, these kids are afraid to admit that they're vaping, especially if we're talking about THC. Now that brings us to regulation as well, because as you know, the federal government won't really touch cannabis regulation at the moment because it's federally illegal. With nicotine, however, they have had ample opportunity. Former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb had actually postponed making moves on this regulation until about 2022. The current acting commissioner has said that they're ready to make moves. But in this sort of vacuum where companies are able to not disclose their ingredients, not submit their liquids for testing, in this vacuum of regulation, now we have these illnesses. So it is obviously very tragic, but I have to say it's not completely unexpected.
All right, well, we'll follow this very closely, Chloe. Thank you so much for joining us here. That's our own Chloe Aiello, live from headquarters. Okay, we're going to switch gears now, and in other news, Apple reportedly acquired the rights to Bryce Dallas Howard's documentary called Dads, ahead of the premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival this weekend. And our own Alyssa Julia Smith caught up with legendary director Ron Howard, the director of the dad of Bryce Dallas Howard, and a producer for her documentary. Take a look.
We're in the middle of a documentary boom right now.
Yeah.
Why do you think people care so much about docs now, especially more than ever?
Wow. Well, I think people have sort of discovered it, and of course, it began with Sheila Evans at HBO, and sort of educating all of us as to just how entertaining a documentary could be, and how varied the experience of watching documentaries could be. And so that's been luring more and more filmmakers into that discipline. But I also think that as we get more and more outlets, more and more channels, there's something about the subjects that a documentary can tackle in a very honest, authentic way that is appealing to us.
Right.
So if we're unsure as to what to see, there's a million channels and TV series. It's an 8-episode investment, but you find out, oh, there's a documentary about an individual you're fascinated by, or a subject that resonates with you, and it's a single viewing experience. It's going to satisfy your curiosity, and the best of them will also really entertain you. So.
Right. And now the story's about being a dad in modern era. So how do you think social media has changed fatherhood?
Well, I think that, look, we're going through, I think, technology, I think mores, social etiquette, all these things are informing a lot of aspects of contemporary life. Fatherhood is certainly front and center there. But men don't talk about it very much, and I don't think a man would necessarily make a movie about fatherhood.
It takes your daughter to come in.
I kind of think it's interesting that, and she just felt that this is a moment, especially while men in some ways are being challenged, being very often called into question, but there's this other aspect of being a man that is vitally important to society and worth really putting under a microscope. And I think she felt like this was a moment to add to the conversation in a way that could be critical, but also could be celebratory.
And was there anything she taught you as a director?
Courage. She is tough. She's strong. This is her vision. I mean, what little advice I did try to offer her, she ignored. But I mean, she just had a point of view about this, and it was her point of view, and she pursued it with a kind of tenacity that I really admired. Right. And she, there was also a point where people were really liking the film. She could have sort of put it to bed and been done with it, and she kept pressing on it because she had other ideas. I haven't even seen the final versions. Oh, wow. I'm part of my excitement for tonight, but I was really blown away by that follow through, that tenacity, and that vision. And when she pursues directing scripted material for future films, I know she's going to apply that same tenacity and focus and good taste.
And I want to ask you about Hillbilly Elegy, another film here. You're just announced it's Netflix. It's going to go to theaters for a little bit. Is this the new route for streaming services, do you think?
It's one of the routes, and that's what's interesting and exciting in a lot of ways. Look, it's chaos and confusing if you're the people trying to decide what to invest in and how to market it and so forth. Makes a place like TIFF, all the more dynamic, really, because there are all of these options. As filmmakers, it's great. You find the collaborators who you think connect with your idea the best and can support you the most. And if you're passionate about a story, you can find that platform, you can find that company, you can find that partner who can help you make it happen. So it's a new trend, sure, but it's not going to be the only path. There are a lot of reasons for movies to go, to go the theatrical route, and so it's really a matter of, of finding those great partners, and and the ones that you think will help you connect your idea with the audiences in the most dynamic ways.
And real quick before I let you go, do you have a favorite all-time movie or TV dad that you can think of, since we're on the themes of dads here?
Oh my gosh! Well, of course, I had a couple of pretty good TV dads myself. Yeah, so Andy Griffith actually really meant a lot to me in my life. So it's hard for me not to mention him. Right. But it's fascinating to see the way it's evolved, and yet a show like the Andy Griffith Show has really endured, partly because there was something very honest about that relationship between Andy and Opie, and the kind of problems that they addressed they weren't really the sitcom kind of problems. Right. They were, even though they were funny, they sort of focused on very relatable challenges in the relationship and in growing up and in being a father. And so, in its own, simple, methodical, humorous way, I think they really did have vision. And depth, and it's one of the reasons that show has endured.
Excellent stuff there. That was Alyssa Julia Smith talking with the director Ron Howard at the Toronto International Film Festival. Thanks so much to our own Alyssa Julia Smith. And coming up, how one home decor retailer is trying to smoothly navigate the trade war. That's after the break.
into a sorority, and that's how I was going to make my friends. And if I didn't join a sorority, I wasn't going to make any friends. It just wasn't in the cards for me, and it was just going to be added stress on top of school. So I didn't join a sorority, and surprise, I still have friends. People still like me and still want to be around me.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Cheddar.
We are following some news this afternoon around Ford. Moody's has downgraded the company's rating to junk on concerns over the automaker's balance sheet. They are citing the considerable market challenges facing Ford and the weak earnings and cash generation, likely as the company pursues a long and expensive restructuring plan to the tune of $11 billion. This is the first time they've cut their rating since the recession. Shares of Ford falling after hours here, down over 1%, although on the day not too badly. But this cash cost also of approximately $7 billion on top of the $11 billion in charges is one of the reasons why Moody's here is actually downgrading the bond now to a Ba1 rating. And of course, we know that that just means that they have less of likelihood that to pay off their debts. And that's why these Moody's ratings are so important to be tracking here.
That's right.
All right, guys, over at the Home Group Home Decor Superstore, if you guys have not been aware of course, they just announced mixed second quarter earnings, topping estimates on earnings per share, but turning in a lighter than expected sales number. The company, of course, fighting to stay afloat in the crossfire of these trade wars, like many companies are. With us now, Lee Bird, CEO of At Home. Great to have you on with us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's a tough time, especially in retail, and you're depending on a lot of products from overseas. Over at Home, how have you been adjusting to tariffs?
Well, we've been dealing with it for about a year now, with all the tweets that have come out along the way and the announcements. And so what we've tried to do is navigate with a playbook that is working. We work with our supply partners to make sure that indeed that we can find mitigation plans and migrate outside of China to direct source as well. And the last resort obviously is to take price where we need to, but because the last thing we want to do is do that to increase prices to our consumer.
Where would those prices be increased? What kinds of products should consumers be looking out for?
Well, selective price increases. What we do is we comp shop. We're the last person to take price with our competition. We're slow to take price because we're an everyday low price leader. So when we see the competition move, we'll follow that slowly.
Okay, and I really wanted to have you guys on because I think you have a very interesting growth strategy, because you want to grow to 600 stores in the long run, but it's not clear yet how long it takes to get there. And in addition, I think you've disclosed previously that it takes about $3 to $4 million per new store. Is that right?
It does. It does.
So how do you get there if you want to expand, but then it's $3 to $4 million per 600 stores?
Well, they pay for themselves really quickly. Actually, we do over $2 million in EBITDA in their first year. So within 2 years, the cash flow payback is there. And we've opened up over 200 stores. They open up profitably and strong, and we continue to open them, and we have another 400 in front of us.
So right now we've seen other retailers, they have signed petitions that go to the administration talking about how this will impact consumers. Is At Home one of those brands that was also signing on when we were seeing Walmart, Target, some of these major companies write petitions and get a bunch of other companies in the retail segment to sign on to them also?
We have not. We're just dealing with the situation at hand. We work with our supply partners once we know of these situations, and then we just move forward from there.
What are some of the products that are still doing well for you guys time and time again?
Oh boy, we do great across the whole entire assortment. We decorate the entire house. So think of rugs, lamps, furniture, wall art, and now it's seasonal time. So Halloween, harvest, and Christmas is in the store now and we're ready to go.
You have a company in Wayfair that really originated online. However, it's expanding into e-commerce very slowly but surely as well. When you look at the e-commerce businesses that now are diving into brick and mortar, how do you stave off any competition should they be able to grow that up?
Well, we've been on our own journey for e-commerce now for the past couple of years. We had a Demandware platform a number of years ago where all of our assortment could be seen online, so you could compare the prices to any online player or any other brick and mortar player. We added the inventory visibility to our products just this past spring. We'll add a buy online, pick up in store capability in January. That'll roll to our stores the rest of the year. And then after that, we're going to use the stores as the center of our business model where we can then ship from store and deliver from store going forward.
And have you been able to pinpoint, when you're expanding to 400 more of these stores, where the important nexus points are to be able to be the fulfillment center and the front of the house?
Yeah, we've created a market plan for all of those 600 stores. We know exactly where we want to be, and we actually use second generation real estate. So when other stores close, we take that opportunity and actually take that location over from them very affordably, and then are able to open our stores very cost effectively and then have really quick paybacks on those stores.
So it sounds like the leases that you will see when you're moving into a store, a footprint where somebody else has moved out, is actually more advantageous for you. It's a little bit lower than perhaps what they would have been paying. What about the square footage as well?
It's about 85,000 square feet, so the same as some of the mass players out there and the big box players. But not very many people want those big boxes anymore.
Right, and they've been trimming that down.
So it's a supply and demand situation. So we take advantage of those situations, come in, pay a low rent, keep our prices low so our customers win.
We don't see a lot of at-homes up here in the New York, New Jersey region.
Not yet.
Are you planning to expand?
We are. We have one in Wayne, New Jersey right now, and we'll have a few more in the tri-state in the next 12 months.
And I guess I'm thinking about the way people like to shop, because I think, you can't really buy a chair without sitting in it first. You want to see these things, right, kind of in person. Do you feel like the home furnishing sector is more immune to the online trends of shopping than in other parts of the e-commerce world?
Yeah, what I would say is our items decorate the home. It's a personality. It takes an empty space and turns it into your own home. So people do want to see, touch, and feel it, but I also know that they want to price compare. That's why all of our items are online, so you can see it, compare it to the online players, and see the great value to come into our store.
Excellent stuff there. Lee Bird, CEO of At Home. Thanks so much for joining us here to break down the numbers today.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Coming up, which came first, the chicken or the sandwich? Well, Morgan Spurlock has the answer in another eye-opening Super Size Me movie. He joins us next to explain.
Are you?
We need to go meet the guys. I'm lit. Can you drive?
Pool party at Jesse's. Can you drive? Will you drive? I'm a little toasty.
Nope. Nope, I'm high. But I can order us a ride.
Okay.
Friendly reminder, don't drive high. If you feel different, you drive different.
Welcome back, everybody, to Cheddar.
Wendy's cut its 2019 outlook as it plans to launch breakfast nationwide next year. This is some breaking news that's coming across here as the fast food chain plans to invest about $20 million to support its U.S. stores to prep for the launch. And Wendy's expects adjusted earnings per share to decline by 3.5% to 6.5% potentially by 2019. Excuse me. This stock here in after hours, you were seeing it there on the screen, moving lower here by about 0.5%, a little more than that. The stock actually closed down by roughly 2% here on the day as well. So we'll continue to watch that. However, staying in the same space, same industry, the Popeyes spicy chicken sandwich heating up the chicken wars across the fast food industry. It's all about the chicken though, and you realize that. And Supersize Me too. Holy chicken, it agrees, but this new film could have you thinking twice about the next time you get in line at Popeyes. Joining us now is writer and director of Supersize Me Too, Morgan Spurlock, and Chicken Farmers, Jonathan Boutram and Zach Boutram, joining us here today. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us here on set. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes, all right, so Morgan, let's start with you. The timing of this really couldn't be any better for you. Chicken sandwich really being the viral craze of the summer.
That's right.
Why was this something that you wanted to explore?
Well, the chicken industry is it's the most eaten animal on the planet. So we said if we're going to talk about the kind of change in the industry from a perspective, what better way than to get into that from the perspective of a chicken. Yeah, and so we open our own fast food chicken restaurant called Holy Chicken. Yeah. And the film shows you on this whole journey. I raise my own birds with these brilliant chicken farmers. We serve our own chickens in the restaurant, and there's actually going to be one opening in New York City this Wednesday.
Wow, what did you learn from that experience?
I mean, I tell you the thing that I learned the most is just how mistreated chicken farmers are by this business. Like, these guys are the unsung heroes of our food business, and they are taken advantage of, they are stepped on, they are literally squeezed by these giant corporations in a way that is incredibly unfair.
And so when you think about the corporations that you've worked with in the past, where would you like to see a better dialogue, one that perhaps benefits you more in the future? And what have you been able to tell them so far that's gotten across?
Well, there is no dialogue. Period. It's just you do what they want you to do, or you've lost your farm, your home, everything, your livelihood. You know, farmers are cut from a different mold. I mean, we're prideful and we like to do a good job. We like to take care of the animals, and we like to put out a good product for the people, but they don't allow us to do it anymore.
And Jonathan and Zach, your family has been running a farm in Alabama for generations now. Can you explain some of the changes that you've seen as demand for chicken has really grown globally? And I know, Zach, you are obviously very instrumental now in running the farm as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, most of our houses were built when I was born. So I was raised in a chicken house. And, you know, because of all this stuff, I don't have chickens. I don't even have the luxury of trying to get a contract anymore to grow chickens. I've been blackballed from the industry, by the industry. All because of Dad speaking out. But other than change, chickens get bigger faster, and we put more chickens back in all the time.
And can you explain also, you know, a lot of people have stopped eating meat because they feel like chickens are being raised inhumanely, that the way that they're slaughtered is sort of inhumane. Can you speak to the changes that have maybe occurred inside of the farming industry to make it a more humane process in order to, you know, feed us in a more humane manner?
Mm-hmm. Well, it has changed. 30, 40 years ago, you didn't have that many chickens in a barn. Now then, it's less than a square foot for one chicken, and they live in their own feces, eat their own feces, and have to fight to go get feed and water. That's not a healthy chicken. They breathe methane. They're so heavy, they fall down on that nasty ground, and ammonia and methane gas comes up and burns their breasts, burns their paws, their feet. And it didn't do that years ago, like about 20 years ago. It wasn't that bad, but now it's got really bad.
And is that because of the pressure that you're facing
growth?
From
it's growth,
yeah.
It's money, it's scale. It's like they want more. And we live in a nation and a time now where not only do we want our food fast, we want it at a very certain price point. And so to keep up with that scale, you're getting like 25, 30,000 birds stuffed into one barn that, as Jonathan said, years ago didn't have that many in it. So there's a volume that they're trying to meet, and we believe there's a better way to meet that volume.
You actually met with marketing experts around this. You learned that about health halos. What are those for those of us who don't understand that?
A health halo is anything that makes you think the food is better for you than it actually is. Okay. Like, we don't eat fried food anymore, we eat crispy. Crispy sounds so much better for us. It sounds a little crunchy and nice, sure. Yeah. You know, but it's still deep fried just like everything else. You know, we surround our food with, you know, with vegetables. You know, we'll put a deep fried chicken. You know, we'll put salad all over it. You put some lettuce on it, make it look green and healthier for you. Again, doesn't really matter. We use terms like natural, better. Free range. The type of vernacular that we use where we think things are better for us, like free range, is such a misleading thing. You just saw me there on the screen as I was standing inside that little metal pen. All of our birds were all natural, cage-free, antibiotic-free, hormone-free, and free range.
And
all labels that ultimately are controlled by the USDA, but ultimately can be manipulated to mean absolutely nothing. Like free range, we opened up a little door, gave our chickens about a 5x5 access area, and they don't even have to walk outside to be considered free range. Just have to open the door and let them potentially have access, and they are quote unquote free range.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking it through your own experience running this business. How well did Morgan do as a chicken farmer? And do you find that this
worst chicken farmer
ever? But I mean, is the point of your project here to show that you can do this in an ethical and in a better way and keep up with demand?
I think that's a great way to talk about this. Is yes, there is a better way to do it. The film does talk about that, and that's what we want to do. Is we want to empower more chicken farmers, more people, the ability to do that, and and hopefully we can do that through Holy Chicken. Because what better way to change things than with a delicious grilled crispy chicken sandwich?
And Jonathan and Zach, I'd be interested in knowing from the family side, when you hear about some of these new trends that are emerging, particularly around Beyond Meat and how they want to move into some of the alternative plant-based meats, and bringing that to consumers, what goes through your mind as a chicken farmer, and how is that going to impact your business, perhaps?
Well, I mean, people need the choice if they want to eat that, but the thought that I have of it, what's binding that vegetable together? And the bread, where'd the bread come from? I think this is a promotion thing more than it is healthy.
Yeah.
So that's what I think about it, because I actually think we can probably, if we do chickens like Morgan grew, be a healthier chicken than that vegetable patty that they have.
And we're also not going to be able to do it overnight. We eat 50 billion chickens a year worldwide, 50 billion, 24 million a day in the United States, 17,000 a minute, 300 a second. So right now, while we're talking, there's 300 chickens getting eaten every second. You're not just going to change that. It's going to take time, and we believe there's a better way to make that happen.
And Zach, for the next generation, how do you expect to grow the farm and maybe change it in the future?
Well, every day everything's evolving, and a lot of people now are wanting hands-on farms. Like the consumer wants to be able to come out to the farm, and I kind of like that. I like my involvement too with people. Yeah. So I want to be able to change our farm to where we can get people to the farm so they see what's going on.
Come on, people already love to pay to go pick apples for a company. Let's have them pay to come let's have them pay to come feed our chickens. I love that.
But I feel
they can come pay, work on the farm, feed our chickens, and then go home feeling good about it. We'll give them a shirt, a hat, we'll give them Holy Chicken hats.
Did you not feel guilty though, like, eating one of the ones that you raise yourself?
Do you feel guilty eating a chicken?
Well,
you feel guilty when
I've never had to raise and interact with it.
Like if you raised your puppy and then had to eat your puppy, you'd feel bad about it.
I mean, that feels weird.
I'd probably feel weird eating my puppy, but I think a chicken's a different thing. Yeah.
Some people, I mean, once they have the experience, they change their relationship to meat because of that.
That's right. Well, I think a lot of people, and that's the thing, is we have such a kind of disconnected relationship with our food, out of sight, out of mind.
Sure.
And listen, I grew up hunting in West Virginia, so I mean, I grew up like these guys where I knew where my food came from. I hunted food my whole life, so I have a different relationship with food than a lot of people, which is like they never see chicken till it's in the grocery store. Like it's like the chicken is happy, they see pictures of it, and then suddenly it just winds up in a grocery store. That whole middle part is just erased. It's like this invisible void.
It's true. I would be open to an invitation, Zach, and to meet
come to our farm.
One that will nourish me.
Come meet our happy chickens.
All right, we're going to do it. All right, Morgan, thank you, and Zach and Jonathan as well for being on with us. Of course, that is Morgan Spurlock and Jonathan Buttram and Zach Buttram here with us on Cheddar. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, guys, switching gears. In other news, Target planning to take its revamped customer loyalty program nationwide. The retailer has been testing the program known as Target Circle in a handful of markets this year and revealed today that it already has 2 million subscribers. The company says the pilot program is showing that people who join Target Circle are spending more money in stores and online. The program doesn't require a fee nor a credit card, though, from Target, and this brings us to our Twitter poll today. Which store has your favorite loyalty perks? Is it Target, is it Starbucks, is it CVS, or is it Kohl's right now? I would say CVS is definitely never going to be on my list. I don't go to Target or Starbucks all that much. I don't think I can participate, honestly, in this poll at all. Oh no. CVS, really 22%. Starbucks, 45%. A lot of coffee drinkers out there. What would you say?
I mean, they had a pretty good loyalty program starting up. All right, we got to go. That's it for us today, Chet Heads. For those sticking around, we've got Cheddar Esports coming up next.
Thanks. No, that was just a lot. Yeah.
be an esports athlete and to be as successful as I've been, it's a dream come true.
Because it's Cheddar, it's the future of sports.
Once I'm done streaming for a living, I think I'll probably just play video games. Maybe I'll stream that. Who knows? We'll see.
This is going to be a great time.
And of course, Zane Van Sally in the corner.
This is a group of amateur players that kind of came out of nowhere.
They have so much team cohesion.
Oh. It's golden.
I'm always fine. But people are today on the table. See?
Hello?
And here at the NBA 2K leagues,
Love to dip into games like Overcooked or Gang Beasts and maybe a little bit of Overwatch.
Always wanted to create a video game. Always wanted to create a video game console.
Bring me my food, I'm hungry.
What matters is the real world impact.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cheddar Esports, powered by Logitech G. I'm Jimmy Mondel, as is the usual, and of course, as is the usual once again, it's Aaron Ashley Simon. What's going on?
Nothing much. I had a really good weekend. I was able to rest a little bit. I'm a little bit sick, but I was able to play Rainbow Six Siege with my friends, and I can't lie, I like that online play better than Black Ops 4.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty that's a good statement. I definitely agree with that one. Black Ops 4 is in a weird state right now, and of course, in the corner, Zane Bonsali. What's going on?
Not much. Excited to talk about some esports after a weekend. There was a lot of stuff that went down. Watched a lot of LCS matches. So excited to talk about that.
Gonna be so good today.
Tape's gonna be amazing today. Astralis.
Dude, there's so much FPS action. We got Overwatch, CS, we got League, like you were mentioning, over in Europe. Yep. It's gonna be good. It's back.
We want to hear what you guys are talking about too. As always, talk to us in Twitch chat. We're all in there. Talk to us about your favorite moments from the weekend. If you have any questions for us, for our guests, put them in there. We'll make sure to get to them during the show.
Yes, guys. Use the Twitch chat to talk to us about the entire program. If you have questions for our guests or anything, hop on over to there. So if you purchased NBA 2K20 last Friday, you might have the same complaints with the rest of the community. And if you haven't noticed, there's a hashtag FixNBA2K20 was trending on Twitter all day. I think it might have hit #1 or #2. So for today's social poll, we want to know, which of these complaints do you think is the biggest deal? Is it graphics, gameplay mechanics, or badge point problems? Let us know, and as always, we'll let you guys know the results at the end of the show.
Yeah, I saw the clip of Zion Williamson doing voodoo magic. And
just passing the,
it was beautiful. I don't know.
Sim style.
Kind of like went around him, like he was a son.
Bringing around town. No, so I clicked gameplay mechanics, and apparently the third option right now is leading, but that may change by the end of the show. And speaking of today's show, we've got the latest gaming and esports updates in the Cheddar Esports headlines. Then Overwatch League caster Hex, he's back on the show to give us a recap of the 2019 playoff matches. Spoiler, New York made it to winners finals.
Gosh, what?
Yeah, I know, dream come true. And afterwards, the senior brand manager and community manager for eFootball PES 2020, it's Andre Bronzoni, and Robbie Ron will join us here in the studio.
Plus, ESL's VP of Pro Gaming, Michal Blihaj, will give us the details on their newly announced ESL CSGO Pro Tour, and then we'll break down the recent Star Ladder, League of Legends, and cannot forget Overwatch League highlights in this week's edition of Eating Tape.
Exactly, it's gonna be really good. Also in this Twitch chat. Let's take a second right now because a Blissful stopped by. Usually watch this on my television. Happy to finally get to experience the Twitch life. Yes, if you're watching it on TV, hop on over to twitch.tv/cheddar if you want to join the conversation. It's happening every day for 1 hour, 5 to 6.
5 to 6 p.m.
Live. Okay, let's get into today's Cheddar Esports headlines, powered by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Okay, so Astralis has won the StarLadder Berlin Major with a record-breaking performance, ending Avantgarde's fairy tale run in just 2 maps, knocking out the top-ranked CSGO squad, Team Liquid, along the way. Astralis has won the last 3 straight majors and 4 overall for the year. And with that win, the Danish squad, ooh, Jesus, what was that? Takes home a cool $500,000 and becomes one of, if not the most dominant team in CSGO history. Though, they may need to spend some of that money to repair the trophy after Device broke it. Yeah, the bottom of it fell out. With Berlin in the books, teams are looking ahead to the next major in the spring of 2020. The details and locations of it haven't been released just yet, though, so stay tuned, and of course, we'll keep you updated on that one. But Astralis, what a run to come from quarters facing the world champions in Team Liquid to bring it all the way back and take another major here.
I mean, Astralis did not look great coming out of groups. I mean, Astralis have looked not up to their skyward level that they've been at for most of the year for a while now, but this was really just an ascent back to where we expect them to be, right?
Yeah.
Started out low, and then their play just got better and better and better.
Ooh.
They beat out Team Liquid in 2 maps too. They looked unstoppable once they got to bracket stage, honestly.
That game in quarters though, like what a meeting of the Titans to be graced by so early in that bracket play.
Yeah.
Crazy runs as well by Team NRG, right? They're ranked currently at number 3 in the world, right under Astralis. Team Liquid still leading the way in HLTV rankings. Insane. Great run for them, great run for the Americans. It's looking good.
Yeah, it's definitely looking good. I was very happy about the fairy tale run that Avantgarde had, just because, you know, we've been discussing Team Liquid for constantly, and of course, Astralis is part of that conversation of being a top and dominant team as well. But to see someone come in and just completely throw everyone off, I think that's what makes competitive esports amazing. You never know what can happen in any of the competitions.
Right, and speak about putting your region on the map, right? They're the only team from Kazakhstan to come out in that sort of domination. Hopefully they can repeat, because historically they haven't been that good, but, you know, is it a one-off or is it a consistent performance that they're going to be able to hold up? We will see in the next major that takes place in February of next year, most likely.
Yes, we will. All right, guys, so let's head on over and talk about Twitch. They have a new partnership deal with the NFL team, with the Oakland Raiders, but they're actually going to be moving to Las Vegas in 2020. Allegiant Stadium will become the soon-to-be former Oakland team's new home next year and will have a Twitch-branded lounge in its lower level, featuring streamer stations and viewing screens. Twitch says it plans to host esports competitions and Twitch events. The $1.9 billion stadium being built adjacent to the famed Las Vegas Strip is scheduled to open in August of 2020 and will sit 65,000 people. The Raiders' relocation to Las Vegas was approved in 2017, and they'll become the first football team in the city since 2015, when the Las Vegas Outlaws played in the Arena Football League. So clearly, for both parties, the main focus is to elevate experience, and this makes sense, right? Because now Twitch found a consistent home, not only for gaming, but consistent home for sports. The great thing about this partnership deal is that teams like the NFL teams, NBA teams, their stadiums aren't going to really move anytime soon.
Right.
You have UNLV football playing, you have other teams that are playing there, so it's great that they have a stationary home in Las Vegas, and even better that it's in a betting city as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and this is great to see Las Vegas doubling down on their esports presence. Of course, they have the HyperX Esports Arena, but I love the way that they're activating inside this Raiders Arena, right? They're going to have a whole esports lounge. The Twitch Lounge, I think it's dubbed officially. It's gonna be sick. I can't wait to actually see it come into fruition.
Vegas for esports. That's what I'm keeping my eye on, right?
Yeah.
Because we've talked a lot about Los Angeles being the hub of esports for North America for a while now. We've seen other cities popping up and stuff, but Vegas seems like it makes a lot of sense in terms of somewhere where they're open to having new establishments there, where you can have those betting laws, meaning people can bet on matches and stuff. I think that this might just be the start for more stuff in Vegas. It's not just the start. I mean, esports arena in Vegas happened a while ago now, right?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And while I want Vegas to be the place where esports grows, and while I want to see the continued growth of esports, oh my God, is it an oven there, dude? Oh my Jesus.
I don't know. Do we want that to be the place where esports grows? I don't have anything necessarily against Vegas as a city, but we've talked a lot about how focusing esports popularity on betting has trade-offs to it, right? Positives and negatives.
Well, let's keep in mind too, I'm starting to see a similar trajectory with esports as we've seen with sports in some capacity. Like with sports, you have various large markets. It's New York City, Los Angeles. So now it's like we're actually starting to see the development of these quote unquote large markets within North America for esports. And then obviously later on, we'll have the smaller cities like Arlington, Texas, and a few others. So I'm actually curious to see what are those large markets going to be considered, if not New York and Los Angeles.
Yo, let's make New York happen, right? We're on the up and up anyways. We got our own Overwatch League team. Call of Duty is on the way. What else is in store? All right, guys, let's pivot real quick and talk about 2K20 because it did release last week, and though we did have a good bit of fun with it on the show last Friday, it seems that many fans aren't too pleased with the latest addition to the franchise. From pros to casual players, fans of the games have taken their complaints about it to social media, making the hashtag #FixNBA2K20 one of the most popular throughout the weekend. Seasoned vets of the series know that, like many other sports titles, the game is often in need of a patch on release to smooth out some of the rougher edges, though that did not stop fans from sharing glitches and bugs throughout the weekend. Problems with the badge points system causing lost progress, bugged animations, and teleporting balls, my favorite. A quick search of the hashtag will show you that and much, much more. Yeah, go look out for that Zion Williamson clip real quick.
Yeah, that's right. And also, I asked the viewers to hit me up on Twitter with some of the problems they've been having. J.A. Bridgeport says badge and rep progress aren't working and that a lot of players are dealing with crashes. And then you have GLG said, Out of Pocket says, my career isn't working at all, which is the my career mode. And WR Pro AM League says stats are messed up, teams are disappearing, and load times can be pretty rough in spots. So I think it's important to note that a lot of the community members aren't necessarily upset about gameplay. Yeah, there are some bugs and issues with gameplay itself, but it's more so of these progressive elements that they're upset about. The parts where you work hard to get these badges and attributes and build them up, and to the point now where like, they're working so hard and they're not even reaping the benefits. Like they're not even getting the attributes, they're not even getting the badges. And I think that this is kind of like a little bit of a turmoil situation that's happening right now because 2K has constantly been, members have been upset every time a new 2K game has been released. They feel like they were promised things within this game. Yeah, I see. They felt like they were promised things in this game and it didn't end up happening. And that's where this Fix 2K20 hashtag is really trending because they're really upset.
Yeah, they're upset, and I love that all the anger, you know, we love Ronnie. He's a cool dude, but I love that all the anger gets directed towards him for some reason. They're like, fire Ronnie, get rid of him.
Because he's the face.
He's the face, I get it.
He's
the
a marketing
public face,
but...
yeah. But poor guys, they're just beating him up. And it's like, ah, man, like I totally understand he's not behind the death. Oh my God, that was crazy. He's not behind the development of the game itself.
Yeah.
Like he's pitching a lot of the ideas, but of course a lot of these things come down to the code itself and the game just not working.
Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, they are working on it. You know, one of my friends who's on NBA 2K TV has been looking actually at the Reddit feed to get some additional information. So just be patient, guys. Send the information over, and hopefully it gets fixed. I mean, this kind of what happens with video game releases. Sometimes they don't work out. They don't work out so well. All right, but at least you guys don't have problems like World of Warcraft, because let's talk about that a little bit. As we reported on in recent weeks, the popularity of World of Warcraft class has exploded. While the launch was troubled with lag spikes and absurdly long logging queues, nostalgic fans have been logging plenty of hours and watching the game in record numbers on Twitch. However, the fun stopped for several hours over the weekend when the classic servers were hit with a DDoS attack, aka Distributed Denial of Service attack. Blizzard confirmed the attack in the afternoon on Saturday, saying it led to, quote, high latencies and disconnections. A Twitter account by the name of UK Drillas claimed credit for the attack, giving a 30-minute warning before players started running into connection errors. It has not been confirmed, but the account was suspended shortly thereafter. About 10 hours later, Blizzard confirmed that they had stabilized servers and that the outage was over. So for those who don't know what DDoS is a malicious attempt basically to disrupt normal traffic to a server or a network by overwhelming its infrastructures with traffic. It's kind of like a traffic jam. You got a traffic jam, you can't go anywhere. It's kind of standstill, and then the game ends. And they were actually saying, I don't know, Jimmy, you can tell me, but they were also reportedly saying that this DDoS also affected Overwatch a little bit as well.
Interesting. I personally didn't experience anything, but I would assume that if it's hitting Blizzard servers, it's probably widespread, meaning it would probably hit Black Ops servers, Destiny servers currently, and maybe whatever else they have going on. This is not the first time that World of Warcraft has been DDoS, and it's probably not going to be the last, being probably the most popular MMORPG in the world. And, you know, people get salty. So I don't know exactly the cause of the DDoS. Sometimes when, you know, hackers are out here or like people with malicious intent, they're trying to get some sort of money or just cause some sort of controversy online and they're like, hey, attention. But not really sure, but I'm sure Blizzard's gonna be on it already, though it's unfortunate for the people who are waiting in queue and just get kicked out because they got DDoSed. It's so sad.
I mean, I'm surprised. Was that even did they have a hashtag for that? Was that trending? Because I would get really upset if I was on that long queue line and then I couldn't even get in because you got DDoSed. Like,
yeah.
I'll be so upset.
In the chat, Hexagram saying they've DDoSed Twitch service to try knock the OWL off the air. Wow, that is DDoSing with intention if I've ever heard it.
Wow, people are very malicious. My gosh.
They're going for it. Well, you guys heard it here. Don't DDoS or, you know, you'll get arrested. No, I don't know if you'll actually get arrested, but don't do it. It's not a good thing. All right, guys, that is pretty much it for today's Cheddar Esports headlines powered by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. You, of course, need a place to play, and they can help you get there. Rocket Mortgage, the proud supporter of esports.
Yes, they are. All right, coming up, Overwatch League caster Hex is back to break down the playoff bracket matches, and afterwards, Andre Brozani and Robbie Ron join us in studio to give us the details on the upcoming eFootball PES 2020. You're watching Cheddar Esports.
I started out at a city college, not at all what I expected the college feel to be like. I got out to Ohio State and all that was just like blown out of the water. It was like the kind of movie feel of insanely big campus, huge student population, everyone's sucked into this idea of the school pride, and it's really cool. I love it. I really like being a part of that.
Esports Instagram for all of the great content our team is creating day in and day out. And we actually continued the DDoS conversation within Twitch. They're saying that even Wikipedia was hit as well with it. That's crazy. And I asked Shadow Chief if this was based off of the same person who quoted it, saying that they were responsible for it. But we don't know, but the timeliness of it is very suspect.
Come on, man, why'd you gotta hit Wikipedia like that? Like, come on, they're free.
Yeah.
Like, what do they do to you?
There's plenty of kids that are starting school up. They need to find a place to write papers and get information.
What did Wikipedia ever do to you? All right, let's pivot. Let's talk about week 2 of the Overwatch League's 2019 playoffs wrapped up this weekend, leaving us with 6 remaining teams competing for their share of the $5 million prize pool. Joining us now via Skype is Overwatch League caster and friend of the show. It's Robert Kirkbride, aka Hex. Hex, welcome back, man. How you doing?
Doing good. I gotta send you guys a new headshot. That doesn't even look like me anymore.
Ooh, yeah, you got the whole facial hair thing going on now. It's a good look, dog.
I've evolved.
Yes, you have. All right, let's start with the Hangzhou Spark, right? Lost a Game 7 match to the Gladiators, but bounced back, knocked out the Seoul Dynasty afterwards, which we saw a very emotional interview. What are your thoughts on their overall performance?
I think the Spark, in this meta, you're going to go as far as your Doomfist can take you, right? And I think Bazzi really stepping into the role looked really, really good. Godsby's solid on Reaper. And I think they just need some big plays. I don't think they have the across-the-board talent that the other teams do, but I think that Bazzi can make those big plays. And with Doomfist now, I mean, if your Doomfist just has the best game of their life, you're going to win that series. I'd also look at a player like IDK, who's been ultra consistent on Lucio all year. So when you're going to map picks, you're probably picking things like Eichenwald, Ilios, where your Lucio can make giant plays because there's no bad teams left in these playoffs. It's just about getting one or two more plays than the other team, and then you can pull it off. So I think the Spark are definitely an underdog heading in, but they do have playmakers, and they have the ability to upset anybody.
So now let's go to the 5 remaining matches before the Overwatch League's 2019 Grand Finals, and we would like you to break them down for us. So the first match is on Thursday, Atlanta Reign versus the Spark. Reign got sent down to the losers bracket by, oh my gosh, NYXL. Who would have thought? How do they adjust moving forward?
I think it's just these small plays. Atlanta lost to NYXL, but even 4-2 doesn't show you how close that was. They went into halftime down 0-2, but either of those maps could have gone either way. They looked good on assault maps, and they had a strategy. Like, they're running Ashe, of all things, and they're the only team to really do it. So I think they really need to adjust just based on ultimate usage. I thought New York was just a little bit cleaner when it came down to the order in which they used ultimates, the timing in which they used ultimates, and just tracking cooldowns a little bit better. So it wasn't a big thing that Atlanta was struggling on. I think Baby Bay needs to get a little bit better because I thought Sabiobi outplayed him on Reaper, but that's just tracking cooldowns. That's tracking when you're going to get value out of Death Blossoms. So it's small stuff, and it's stuff they can fix with film review.
Yeah, no, I was so happy to see the classic DPS duo, Libero, Sabiobi, back at it again with the white vans. All right, let's talk about the second match on Thursday. LA Gladiators versus the San Francisco Shock, of course. The Gladiators were sent to the losers by the Titans and the Shock, and just ended the Spitfires season. So, what are your picks for that match?
I got the Shock. Like 100% I got the Shock. I think Hydration is their best Doomfist and their best Sigma on the Gladiators, and that presents a pretty big problem. You could always have Lane Shore4 Roberts come in and have a match of his life. But the thing about the Shock, when they had lost to Atlanta in that epic 7-mapper, I was like, that's fine. The Shock always come back like angry. They come back angry. They clowned on London by putting in like whoever they wanted. Like, that's how the Shock always responds to losses. They don't go on a downward spiral. They're like, let's never have that happen again. So I think the Shock come in upset, and I just don't think the Gladiators have the staying power to stick with San Francisco.
So Friday, the winners' final match between the NYXL and Titans. Division leaders going head to head. We actually had a conversation talking about how like everyone was like, "Oh yeah, this is not going to happen," and then it actually happened with these two teams.
So many people picked the Reign over New York, and New York made it out. This is the first time we're really seeing them find this much success. Who's going to come out on top?
I made a prediction on my other talk show earlier today, and I'm just going with the heart on this one. And against all odds, I got NYXL coming out of this one. I think Vancouver's a very good team. They have a lot of good players, and I think Vancouver probably has the edge in the Doomfist matchup. I think Libero is good, but NYXL has more interesting strategies, and they have more versatility, especially if Libero is going to be in this starting 6 nonstop. It used to be they only brought him in for the May, but now he plays the May. The Symmetra plays a lot of different things. Sabiobi's Reaper has been the thing of beauty lately. I think his game sense is really coming to the forefront, and I think NYXL is playing out of their minds right now. I think it's going to be close, and I could be wrong, but I got NYXL taking this one.
Shout out to 5DVs. Their watch party is going to be crazy. Well, it's going to be so good, dude. Okay, of course, now we have to ask the big one. Grand Finals, who's going to make it, and who's going to take it all?
Well, since I've NYXL winning that winners matchup, that means they will be there. I'm hoping we get a repeat of San Francisco, Vancouver in the losers bracket final, which will be on Sunday. And if that comes to bear, I got San Francisco. I've had the Shock all year. I think they built this roster so intelligently that they're able to adjust all these metas. They've looked really strong, and I think when the rubber hits the road, the San Francisco Shock are just a gutsier team. That's my dream finals, NYXL versus San Francisco. I love Vancouver, but not as much as everybody else does, so that's the one I'm hoping for. But honestly, there's no bad teams left in the playoffs, so like even Atlanta could make a run. This is it's just been a ridiculously strong playoff series for everybody, so I wouldn't be surprised with anything, but I think NYXL will prove doubters wrong and get to the grand finals.
I'm gonna be so sad if Reign beat the Spark and beat the Shock and then make it in the finals and then win it all. But
heck, great expansion team.
I know. It would be crazy. It'd be a good storyline for like franchises overall, right? Like join the franchise, win an Overwatch League grand final, woo! But you know,
golden ticket.
golden ticket. As always, Hex, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, you can catch the action this Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Twitch and OverwatchLeague.com. Hex, once again, thank you if you can still hear us, and best of luck this week. We'll see you later. All right, guys, up next, Andre Bronzoni and Robbie Ron from eFootball Pro Evolution Soccer 2020 are joining us in the studio. They're sitting to our right.
They got a game right here as well.
They do, early copies. And afterwards, we're catching up with ESL's Mihal Blihars. You're watching Cheddar Esports, and we'll be right back.
Hey, my name is Mo, and you're watching Cheddar Esports.
I started out at a city college, not at all what I expected the college feel to be like. I got out to Ohio State and all that was just like blown out of the water. It was like the kind of movie feel of insanely big campus, huge student population, everyone sucked into this idea of the school pride, and it's really cool. I love it. I really like being a part of that.
So the Pro Evolution Soccer Series continues its pursuit of soccer realism with its upcoming edition, PES 2020. Joining us today to speak on the game's new functions and enhancements are Konami's PES Community Manager, Robbie Ron, and PES Senior Brand Manager, Andre Bronzoni. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
So let's get right into it. I know a lot of viewers are interested in gameplay updates. I know you guys had addition of a new finesse dribbling functionality, as well as improved ball physics. So can you break down some of those updates that gamers will be able to see on September 10th?
Well, we have a lot of good things coming up in this game over here, as you guys can see. We are super excited with all the licenses that we're bringing. Of course, the ball physics, as you mentioned, it changed completely the game. We also have the dribbles. We have the finesse pass and finesse dribble as well that brings a totally different realism to the game, and also to the player that is not only actually playing the game or in the player that is actually behind as well, that it gives you totally different realism, right?
Yes. I mean, we have used Andres Iniesta,
Yes.
for the professional, world champions. He actually sit down with the team in Japan and went and worked those details on terms of gameplay. What was real and what was not real.
He's living there right now in Japan, so it's actually really good because he's close to the development team. Our development team went to his house just to talk about more about the tactics, how actually it works in the real life, and how we can replicate into the game. So that was the difference from the other games that we had, the other previous paths that we had for this one right now. So the way the coaches explain the tactics inside in the pitch, how we can describe that to put inside of the game. Yeah. Also, like the passes as well.
What about Ronaldinho? I know that I saw something about that
as well.
That's
something as well. So Ronaldinho is actually one of the ambassadors. He's featuring one of the covers that we have that is only digital, and yeah, and of course we did a 3D scan of him. But not only that, we also all his movements from back of the days, you're gonna be able to use to play and of course use inside of the game. So that's the beauty of having that phenomenal inside of the game.
That's crazy, yeah. Emphasis on details for sure in this new game. So also huge improvements in graphics, right? So talk to us about that. What changes can we see and what should fans be most excited about here?
I mean, we have 4 new partnerships and very strong global clubs like Manchester United. We have Bayern Munich. We have Barcelona, of course.
Crazy.
Arsenal, and we have exclusively Juventus this year. So we have a chance to 3D scan all the players, so you can see the graphics. I mean, they look amazing. Some even say they're better looking on the game than in real life.
Yeah,
that's even better, right?
But it's nice to see because everybody, when they play, they want to see their own players and they want to see how they look and when they see they're so realistic. And not just the way they look, but also the way they play, the way that they move in the field.
Right.
Also the celebrations,
Yeah.
all that cool details. And what's not just done with the 3D scan for the players, but also for the stadiums.
Right. And our dev team, they focus so much on the graphics of the game itself, and I mean Konami is well known for like the excellence in graphics. So that's something that we always try to do as much as possible to have a very good gameplay for everybody that likes to play the game. And of course, the graphics is something that calls people out. You can see the tattoos from all the players. You can see the tattoos from Messi that is just showing right now. So it's something that we're gonna focus that every single year. The gameplay is something that we focus a lot, and we're going to focus that in the other games as well.
So let's talk a little bit more about those big licenses you guys have. And I'm actually really excited because I'm an FC Barcelona fan, and that's one of them. You guys also have Juventus, and you also have Manchester United. So talk to us a little bit about that, and why is it so important to have these big licenses in order to improve the gameplay and the mechanics within the game itself?
Right. I'm going to talk about Barcelona because that's my team as well.
Hey! High five there.
Let me talk about my favorite city. No, Barcelona, we actually just renewed the partnership with them. So we're going to have them for a few more years as a partner, and I hope that we have them for life. But we're gonna have a lot of more 3D scan with the players. We're actually going to try to improve even more the graphics from those players inside of the game. Also, we have the Master League that we actually including a lot of cutscenes that we capture from their training facilities. So there's a lot of good things of being part of Barcelona. Now it's you. You can actually talk a little bit about that.
No, but I mean, we already talked about 3D scans, how we got recreate the stadiums, but this also goes beyond that part of the gameplay stuff. We also focus on the esports. You know, this year we're talking about eFootball,
right?
PES 2020. So, for example, Barcelona has their own esport team, their own esport player, and we also have a big license that we haven't talked about. You know, we talk about the clubs, but we also have the UEFA Euros 2020 coming to this PES 2020. So the nations, you have 15 European nations already from tomorrow, from day one, but we're also gonna be the only game for the esport tournament.
Right.
And we're talking about big esports for this year for PES. We're giving away plus, I mean, $2 million.
Yeah, the prize pool is actually $2 million.
$2 million.
Jesus Christ.
Wow.
That's actually something that, I mean, esports, we're improving on esports year after year.
Right.
Because it's something that it's relatively new, let's put that way. It's been there for a while, but the companies, all the publishers, they are trying to actually get better and better into esports. It is not different from us. So we're changing every single year, trying to find the best way to approach all those e-players. And I think the prize pool, selling the dream, is something that is actually super important. And starting with the prize is actually one of the most important things as well.
So we actually have a quick question from people who are watching, who are fans of the game, and they were wanting to ask is, with all these different changes, are there going to be changes to my club, or is it going to be similar to how it was in the last iteration?
Well, we're always going to have changes. Today, we actually show some good screenshots. The changes for the all the mechanics of my club is not gonna have like a drastic changes on the mechanics. However, we're gonna have way more ways to engage with the players into the My Club. Of course, we have Master League. This is our offline mode that we actually revamp entirely. That's actually the second year that we're revamping this mode. We're actually going to have another changes next year as well. But going back to your question about my club, we're going to have way more, we're going to have the match day integrated into my club. That's one thing very important to say. And we're going to have more campaigns, Legends campaigns, and we're going to have campaigns for our ambassadors. We're going to have campaigns for the derbies that is going to happen at the same time in the real life. We're going to mirror into the game. So that is going to be a lot of more campaigns, I can tell you, that are going to encourage all the players to play my club.
I mean, for the fans that are watching right now, you guys ask for a lot of content coming to my club, and that's what we're delivering right now. So match day will help with that because it will add to the content that already come weekly for my club. So, for example, we used to have only like players of the week just coming from clubs. This time we have also from national teams. So we're gonna have a variety of players coming in, legends of course, and a lot of content that people would like to see.
A lot of good content on the way. Guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. And everyone else, you can pick up PES 2020 starting tomorrow on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Andre and Robbie, thank you once more for joining us here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, ESL's VP of Pro Gaming, Michal Blihaj, gives us the details on the ESL CSGO Pro Tour, and afterwards, we're going to be breaking down esports highlights in this week's Eating Tape. You're watching Cheddar Esports. Stick around.
School, I thought that I had to jump into a sorority, and that's how I was going to make my friends. And if I didn't join a sorority, I wasn't going to make any friends. It just wasn't in the cards for me, and it was just going to be added stress on top of school. So I didn't join a sorority, and surprise, I still have friends. People still like me and still want to be around me.
Also sub to us on our Twitch channel.
We needed to sneeze. Early last week, ESL and DreamHack announced a plan to unify their Counter-Strike Global Offensive tournaments, and joining us now to tell us all about the why is Michal Blihaj, Vice President of Pro Gaming at ESL. Welcome to the show, Michal. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So congrats, first and foremost, on the unification of these two different circuits. So what was the impetus behind this move?
Well, it was quite clear for us. We're a company that wants to provide a very clear zero-to-hero path for players who want to aspire to be maybe the best in the world someday. And we needed something that allowed them to really take that step up in a way that's very transparent and easy to understand as well. So we decided to speak to DreamHack, who we've worked with for a very long time on various different events. And combine what we had with what they had to create one huge story that was probably creating something that was bigger than the sum of its parts.
So why does this combination of two tournament powerhouses make sense now when it wouldn't have, otherwise?
Well, there are two reasons for it. One of it is on the entertainment plane. The other is on the business plane. On the entertainment plane, it used to be that before Counter-Strike grew to be so large, it used to be that we had just a few events and the community would go watch one event and be excited by it. Then there would be a fairly long pause and there would be another event to be excited by. But when those events became very common and players would travel almost every week to events, then that became much more confusing and very non-transparent, hard to understand. So we thought one narrative where we clearly identify the best, the highlight events and good events as well, and those events that build you up. That was very important for us. On the business side as well, a few years ago, we would just talk to sponsors who, well, in the grand scheme of things, are fairly small. So, headset manufacturers and things like that, just for gaming. Now we talk to the Pepsis, the Vodafones, the Mercedes of this world, and those companies have much bigger ambitions and are looking for a much bigger product to be engaged with.
So let's talk about the tour itself, right? Because you speak about how much Counter-Strike has grown, and so we've got a large amount of events going into the next year. So what do we know so far, and when will we learn more specifics?
So right now we have about 20 events around the world, split into the Challenger level and the Masters level. So the Challenger level are events like Mountain Dew League, DreamHack Open events, ESL National Championships. And these events are basically incubators for talent. This is where basically the future of Counter-Strike will earn their stripes and hopefully level up to the Masters level. So in the Masters level, you're going to have stadium events, essentially. So we go out and rent out arenas like the United Center in Chicago, Barclays Center, which will host ESL One in New York in the end of September. Then there's at least a $250,000 prize purse and the best teams and players playing. And all those tournaments will be combined with a ranking, and there's going to be a race to two Masters Championships per year, which will be our largest and most prestigious events. One in the winter in Poland at Intel Extreme Masters Katowice, which is the world's largest esports event, and one in the summer at ESL One in Cologne, which is the oldest ongoing Counter-Strike tournament in the world. So overall, a big, compelling story, and we can't wait to tell you all about it on September 28th.
Of course, yeah, at ESL One at New York. And of course, you're mentioning the Cathedral of Counter-Strike itself, but you talked about earning their stripes, right, in the open scene. So why and how important is it to the scene of Counter-Strike to have these open events?
Well, I think Counter-Strike, plus a couple of other games, but mainly Counter-Strike is unique in that it's very open. It provides opportunity for players, tournament organizers, commentators, everybody basically to come and enjoy. And it does several things. First of all, Counter-Strike very clearly outdoes many other games, including League of Legends, for the viewer-to-player ratio. It clearly outdoes multiple other major esports titles for how many players actually are able to win prize money. And it's important for the longevity of the game. Counter-Strike is a franchise that has survived for 20 years. And as long as there are opportunities for new players, that means those players will try to take those chances, and the Counter-Strike will keep producing new superstars, like Stewie on Team Liquid or Simple on Navi. And without those chances, with a closed ecosystem, it's much, much harder for new talent to rise up and entertain us 5 years or 10 years down the line. So it's incredibly important that we create structures that foster that growth, allow that zero to hero story to actually take place. And we think that the ESL Pro Tour will help achieve that.
With that unified structure that is going to be helping with growth, are there any questions surrounding exclusivity? And when I mean that, as in, will teams competing in the tour be allowed to compete in other series/tours?
Absolutely. It's very, very important that fans are able to enjoy Counter-Strike the way they're used to enjoying it. And in our conversations with Valve, the publisher of the game, they've also stated that it's quite important for us to be delivering the kind of tournaments that fans really want. And fans don't really like exclusivity that much in Counter-Strike.
As we've come to learn. Michal, thank you so much for joining us here today, especially considering it's almost midnight in Warsaw, Poland. Thank you so much once again, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, guys, stick around. We've got Star Ladder, Overwatch League, League of Legends highlights, and more in this week's edition of Eating Tape. And then we will have the results to our NBA 2K20 poll after the break. You're watching Cheddar Esports, and we'll be right back. See you soon. Here. Get to subscribe to us on our Cheddar Esports YouTube channel. Yep. What's happening in the Twitch chat? Some people talking about mobile esports and their prevalence, and bringing up Call of Duty Mobile, which I didn't realize was available in North America.
Yeah, I didn't either, but I mean, we've been talking about that for a while now. Mobile esports, I think, are maybe not the entire future, but part of the future, right?
Oh,
denying that.
Yeah, there's no denying it. And he's also saying no, CODM is in Australia,
Okay.
and anyone can VPN in.
Right.
That makes sense.
We always hear about that.
Always do hear about that.
VPN
Internet
through Australia.
Wacky, wacky world. Okay, so the Star Ladder Major came to its epic conclusion this weekend, along with some important playoff matches in the LCS, LEC, and the Overwatch League. How did Clutch it out?
Oh my God, let's get into it. Today,
Let's get into it.
we're going to recap all the action today in this week's edition of Eating Tape.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Do we have the graphic?
No graphic.
Nope. All right,
Okay.
that's fine.
Let's start things off with the action from DreamHack Montreal, right? TSM takes the Rainbow Six crown right here. To watch this play, it's just headshots for days. It's kind of insane. He's posted up a buy this truck and then a teammate on the staircase as well. It looks pretty dominating from these two members of TSM, and TSM end this round rather, getting the victory for TSM. It's 7-2.
It's one thing I like about Rainbow Six is that you have different angles of attack than in other shooter games. You don't see setups like that in a lot of other shooter games with that much patience and stuff, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. There's so many different angles, and here we're taking a look at Rocket League. So one of the hardest games ever created, I want to say.
Look at this pre-flip there from Garrett G on Energy. That's crazy. Look at how, they're going to show the replay here, I think. Look at how he maneuvers his car even before he hits the ball. He knows exactly the angle he has to hit. I could never be that good at Rocket League.
I could not at all. This is insane. You're watching UIUNL playing the Akuma on the get up here. Watch the switch.
Oh my God.
And
He
the unblocked.
reads the V reversal from Zhao Hai, switches sides, goes for the Raging Demon. That's going to be the round. That's going going to be the game for him. Just absolutely crazy read and execution. Over in LEC, it's Perks getting his 1,000th kill in his career. This comes from the finals matchup between G2 and Fnatic, and you can see Perks just going wild here. He actually does a huge job in cleaning up this fight on the Kai'Sa right there. He only gets 1 kill even though G2 manages to ace Fnatic, but that 1 kill is all he needs to hit 1,000. He's now the most decorated player in the LEC in terms of titles too, with winnings.
Is he the most dominant player to come out of Europe?
He might be. I think that's something we have to talk about. Perks, Caps, Xpeke, I don't know. It's up for debate. But now for the Cinderella story of the weekend. Here's Clutch Gaming destroying CLG on their way to eventually reverse sweep TSM and qualify for Worlds. This game was a heartbreaker for me as a CLG fan. They were so far ahead. They just get caught out top lane. Incredible engage from Clutch. I mean, these guys love to scrap. They love to skirmish. We heard that from the players we interviewed at the finals. That's what got them the win in the end.
That's what got them the win in the end. And if we're talking about winning, this is not the ultimate end story of this match, but the San Francisco Shock did look good in the beginning here, and Moth with the boop. 4 men off the side. You'll watch the replay here in momentarily. Zoop.
Yeah, we were on Erster's perspective, but it's Moth who you really want to watch right here. Look at that. Oh my God.
It's the beauty of Lucio, right? If they're not going to move and Aretha doesn't have a halt, she's gonna go into the river.
The movement to get up there too.
So smooth from the Moth himself. And this one, another tidbit from that match, and it's actually how it ends, because the Atlanta Reign are putting on the pressure here at the final point. The San Francisco Shock return with the Sigma ult of their own momentarily, and it looks good. It's going back and forth. The San Francisco Shock use their beat, turn around to try and deal with the Doomfist in their backline, but then end up C9ing the game to the Atlanta Reign. Watch Sinatra's face.
No one expected the Atlanta Reign to win, least of all Sinatra. You're going to see when we get to him. I mean, the Shock were expected to go all the way with the golden stage. They still have a chance to do it. He can't even believe it.
You could say he was in shock.
Moving on to the big event of the weekend, though, the Star Ladder Major dominated Twitch. And to start things off, it's ZywOo clutching with an ace. I mean, this is just absolutely beautiful counter-strike from ZywOo right here. You can see he's in the 1v2 situation. He's down pretty far against Avant-Garde in general, so this isn't going to do too much in the grand scheme of things. But I mean, look at that ping. And then he knows so well where they are. He's gotten so much information right here, just really good map presence and awareness to be able to clutch this out from him.
Yeah, and it's really hard too, because when you're on the T side here with that Glock, you do not have nearly the range or the accuracy as you do with the CT side. That doubly makes it impressive here. ZywOo really stunning the crowd. Vitality looking good. And now, once more, looking back into the Star Ladder Major, we're looking at Tariq. He clutches this round. It's pretty snasty, but the movement here is what really is impressive. Okay, so throws the molly through the window, tries to go for the plant. He's just kind of baiting it here, right? If he can get the plant here, it's good. They have to come to him. The round is now in his favor. Now he has to hold. Watching the apartments on the top side, here's a bit of commotion coming through and knows he has to be very, very careful here. Finds one on the catwalk, very nicely done. Pivots around the back left pillar of the B site and through the window. Eagle eyes, and even he can't believe it.
Huge moves from Tariq, who's been bumping around teams for a while now, but this new energy with Stanislaw looks so strong, but in the end, not strong enough to finish off Astralis. Astralis is back on top, and of course, it's no one other than Device. Look at this triple kill, which is just exemplary of why Astralis managed to win and why he was the MVP for this weekend.
It's the lineup here that blows my mind. Look, 1 through Ivy, 2, they line up and gets the 3rd with the quick flick down. I just couldn't believe it when I was watching it. Device is so smooth, so confident in his own aim.
Perfect melding of mechanics and map presence, right? Because he knows that by hitting that line, he's going to make it possible for him to hit all those 3 shots. And then to actually do it, I mean, that's the actual hard part.
That's the sequence. If you didn't see, too, Dupree, his other teammate, goes down right below his feet. So if he lost it there, that was it. But just 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Device, what a madman. It was so good.
I'm actually happy Astralis won, because now the Astralis Liquid narrative is actually back and forth.
Yeah.
Having one era and then another era is like, it seems like it just transitioned. Astralis fell off, and now it's like, no, they're both really, really good.
And speaking of eras, too, the Intel Grand Slam itself changed the rules that it takes to accomplish that Grand Slam because Astralis did it, and then right after Team Liquid did it so damn quick. So quick. All right, guys, let's pivot here and talk about, something that happened 2 decades ago.
Speaking of eras.
Right. 20 years ago, Sega released its last video game console, the Sega Dreamcast. And in celebration of its anniversary, Sega is streaming a collection of the console's classics, including Sonic Adventure 2, Soul Calibur, and many others. Happy anniversary, Sega Dreamcast.
I mean, the Dreamcast, really. Sega has not been a popular console maker for a while. You guys can go check out our video on the Cheddar Esports YouTube channel, the decision that ruined Sega, almost ruined Sega, to figure out why they don't make consoles anymore. But you can't deny that these guys were top of the game for a really long time. They were right up there.
Yeah, I know. And a good friend of the show, Danny Penny, I was tweeting online how his first ever, he runs Gamertag Radio, but his first podcast started off as a Phantasy Star Online podcast because that was the game that propelled so many people into this wide and crazy world of the game. It was nuts.
Yep.
Pretty nuts. Really nuts. I actually never touched a Sega Dreamcast, but that's a story for another day.
I think that console was dead and gone by the time you were born, Jimmy.
Probably. Wow. All right, guys, don't go anywhere. We'll have the results to our NBA 2K20 poll when we return. I was born yesterday, and you're watching Cheddar Esports.
It ain't easy watching your brother fall like that, but hey, this is what we work for, all right?
I'll always be with you. See the sunset, the day is ending. Let that yawn out, there's no pretend.
So you sure this agent knows what he has in you? I mean, you're so much more than basketball.
Rebuilding America isn't gonna get rid of the BTs. As long as they're still around, there's no escaping it.
Wake the f up, samurai. We have a city to burn.
Hello, welcome back to Cheddar Esports. Be sure to like and subscribe to us on our Facebook page. Lots of good stuff. We're also people in the Twitch chat talking about Phantasy Star Online and their Dreamcast memories. What was your favorite Dreamcast memory and or game?
Honestly, oh my gosh, so that's when I fell in love with Soul Calibur on Dreamcast. Also, you know, you had Crazy Taxi where, you know, I allowed my wildness to come out when I was playing it. And then also even I really enjoyed Jet Set Radio as well.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I really enjoyed Jet Set Radio and playing that as well. And I mean, there's a lot of good, actually there's a lot of, well, quite a lot of good titles that were on Dreamcast.
Yeah, honestly, iconic titles that came out of the Dreamcast. Real good stuff.
Yes, but what's not iconic is the fact that NBA 2K20 has so many problems today. And earlier on the show, we asked which of the hashtag fix NBA 2K20 complaints is the biggest deal, and here are the poll results. 6% graphics, 34% gameplay mechanics, and 60% badge point problems. I'm not surprised. A lot of them were saying that it had nothing really to do with gameplay because, you know, some people were complaining about shooting, but they were like, it's good that shooting's actually getting harder because it makes it actually a better transition over to the league itself where you can't just be mashing buttons, doing all this crazy stuff. But yeah, so basically it was just like more of the progressive elements that they were upset, like the parts that you have to work really hard to get with badges, attributes, etc. And not even, like, you work so hard and you're playing a game and you think you did so amazing and then you get 0 updates on it. I would be mad too.
I would be mad too. And you know what that reminded me of from the top of the show? We were talking about Black Ops 4 and how it's in a weird state in its multiplayer game. Dude, it is the most infuriating thing to log into that game. I logged in like this morning, actually. I got up at 6 a.m., real nice. I was like, I'm gonna play some Black Ops. There's so many weapons locked behind the paywall, one, and two, the characters, I forgot what they're called, operators, specialists, whatever you want to call them, Genji is in the game. You can pull out a sword and start running around. There's characters that run around on all fours. It's kind of ridiculous. There's a semi-automatic sniper rifle. This is the most infuriating one. Semi-automatic, meaning you can spam the hell out of it, locked behind a paywall, so you have to pay to get it, and it one-shots from the waist up. What? Dude, oh my God, that was the worst.
Listen, I knew the downfall of Black Ops 4 when they started doing ×2 for point systems. Every time a game came out, they were like, oh, it's 2 times day.
Yeah.
I'm like, that seems like it's every single weekend, which means that you guys are having a lot of problems if that's the case. But, you know, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on because we're actually close to Modern Warfare coming out soon.
The Chosen One, please.
It is happening, but guys, that's it for today's show. Tomorrow, Rutgers University Overwatch coach Beanies is joining us, and we'll be checking out Gears 5's multiplayer. I think it's done. Hopefully, I don't know.
Stuck at 50%.
But stick around because I will be streaming Apex Legends with some friends after the show.
Yes, she will be streaming on this channel. Don't tune out from the Cheddar Esports Studio in New York. I am Jimmy Mondel.
I'm Erin Ashley Simon. Special thanks to all of our guests today.
Of course, and of course that's Zane Von Solly. Also the Twitch chat, why not Black Ops 1 and Nuketown asking the real questions.
Nuketown is actually my favorite map.
Black Ops 1 Nuketown may have been the best Nuketown ever made.
Yeah.
And guys, you know when Modern Warfare comes out September 12th, beta, we'll be on that. We'll see you guys later.
Bye. Stick around for my
To be an esports athlete and to be as successful as I've been, it's a dream come true.
Because it's Cheddar, it's the future of sports.
Once I'm done streaming for a living, I think I'll probably just play video games. Maybe I'll stream that. Who knows? We'll see.
This is going to be a great time.
And of course, Zane Van Sally in the corner.
This is a group of amateur players that kind of came out of nowhere.
They have so much team cohesion.
Oh.
It's golden ball.
I'm always hot. But people sorry. Today on the table, see?
Hello?
I'm here at the NBA 2K leagues.
Love to dip into games like Overcooked or Gang Beasts and maybe a little bit of Overwatch.
Always wanted to create a video game. Always wanted to create a video game console.
Bring me my food, I'm hungry.
What matters is the real world impact.
Are you curious about CuriosityStream?
Ooh, yeah.
We've got thousands of documentaries and nonfiction titles on every subject that makes you curious.
That's affirmative.
Want to watch CuriosityStream at your university? You can.
You don't have to look any further than this.
Go to curiositystream.com/education for more information. This is CuriosityStream.
Welcome back to Cheddar News. Now to the biggest stories from around the nation.
Topping the news today, the Coast Guard confirms 3 of the 4 missing crew members from a capsized cargo ship off the coast of Georgia are rescued this afternoon. The South Korean ship Golden Ray began listing badly Sunday morning. The ship was carrying cars from Georgia to Baltimore. By nightfall, the ship was on its side.
You can back off if you need it, but we're in a good position. So it's up to you.
The Coast Guard was able to rescue 20 people before a fire broke out on the ship. The missing crew members were all in the engine room. The Coast Guard released this video of the rescues. Officials say they were able to drill holes in the ship to find the location of the missing crew members.
At this point, the Coast Guard says there are no active oil spills or any other dangers to the waterway. The National Transportation Safety Board will be on scene today to try to determine what caused the ship to list, then capsize. The White House is honoring the fast-acting officers who responded to 2 mass shootings last month.
these incredible patriots responded to the worst violence and most barbaric hatred with the best of American courage, character, and strength. Faced with grave and harrowing threats, the men and women standing behind us stepped forward to save the lives of their fellow Americans. Few people could have done, and even would have done, what they did.
President Trump presented the Medal of Valor to 6 officers who stopped a gunman less than a minute after he began shooting in Dayton, Ohio. Officers killed the 24-year-old suspected shooter who was wearing body armor and carrying multiple magazines of ammunition with him. The president also honored 5 officers who responded to the El Paso shooting. They were able to arrest the suspect who killed 22 people at a Walmart.
Thousands of people are trying to get out of hurricane-ravaged islands in the Bahamas as the devastating impact from Dorian continues to get worse. The death toll in the Bahamas stands at least 44 people, but that number is expected to rise dramatically. Last week, one official said everyone needs to prepare for the loss of life to be staggering. People on the ground say it looks like a bomb hit. The Bahamas Prime Minister attended a memorial service for victims over the weekend and vowed to make sure everyone gets the help they need. But some fleeing residents are being met with yet another challenge. Several hundred storm victims say they were forced off a rescue ferry headed to Florida because they did not have a visa. It turns out those people forced off of the ferry in Freeport don't have to get off the boat. You don't need a visa to travel between the U.S. and the Bahamas. The confusion came one day after another cruise ship brought 1,500 refugees to Palm Beach in a coordinated rescue effort between the U.S. and Bahamian governments. The trial of the Chinese national accused of trespassing at one of the president's Florida retreats began today after a brief postponement. Jury selection was set to begin when Zhang was reportedly brought into the courtroom wearing a prison outfit. She told the judge she could not wear civilian clothing because she was not given any undergarments. Prosecutors say 33-year-old Zhang got through several layers of security before being stopped in the lobby of the Mar-a-Lago resort back in March. The Secret Service found Zhang in possession of electronic equipment that at the time they thought contained suspicious malware. The incident happened while the president was in Florida, but he was not at the club when the woman was arrested. The feds say she bluffed her way into the club by saying she was there for a charity event. The Chinese woman is charged with making false statements to a federal officer and trespassing in a restricted area. Zhang is acting as her own lawyer. She faces 6 years in prison if convicted.
Picking where you go to college isn't always easy. If you need help deciding where to apply, U.S. News & World Report just released its annual list of best colleges. Topping the list is Princeton University, followed by Harvard, Columbia, MIT, and Yale tied for 3rd place. This list includes private and public national universities. We take the private universities out of the mix. Another top 5 emerge: University of California, Los Angeles, University of California, Berkeley, University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, University of Virginia, Georgia Institute of Technology are the top 5 public universities in that order. Ranking is based not only on academic quality, but also retention rates and social mobility. Well, Eddie Murphy comeback season is officially underway. Not only is the star returning to SNL as a host for the first time since leaving the show 30 years ago, he's also reportedly going to return to the stand-up scene as well. But what really has people buzzing today is Murphy's first starring role in a movie since his performance in the 2016 film Mr. Church.
And this latest project has been a long time coming. For over a decade, Murphy says he's been pushing for a movie to be made about comedian Rudy Ray Moore. Finally, he's gotten his wish. The film Dolomite Is My Name premiered at the Toronto Film Festival over the weekend. Murphy stars as the 70s legend.
Moore was a struggling singer and comedian who proved naysayers wrong by creating a hilarious kung fu fighting stage character who he named Dolomite. Cheddar's Alyssa Julia Smith got a chance to ask Murphy what made him want to come back into the spotlight. Check it out.
Well, it all kind of, one thing led into another thing, because I was on the couch and I got this thing and it came together and it was so funny. It came out so well. I was like, hey, now I want to do this, and now I want to get that thing going. Because all this stuff that we're doing now, I've been talking about doing Saturday Night Live for years now. It's just wanted to do the right moment. And I've been talking about doing a sequel to Coming to America, and it was all of it kind of like came together all the stars lined up, so I wound up, doing
What are you
it.
most excited for about December returning to SNL?
No, it's so many things. It's so much. That's like going back to your old high school, And I haven't been back there in so long, and it's a big part of who I am. So I'm just excited about just having that moment, just being in that studio, and I hope that episode is funny.
I'm sure it will be.
But Murphy isn't the only one pulling people to the theaters. Dolomite Is My Name has some serious star power.
Alyssa also got the chance to speak to Keegan-Michael Key about the influence of the film. Take a look.
The world needs to know this story because it's not a story about a black man per se. It's a story about a man who wouldn't quit. That's the thing. By all means and by all rights, this movie should never have been made. His vision, he was not a good actor. He was not terribly handsome. He was a pretty okay singer. His comedy was raucous and raunchy, but not necessarily side-splittingly clever. His talent was his perseverance. His talent was his persistence. And I think that's something everybody needs to learn. Like, there's many talented people in the world. There are lots of people who have a sense of acting or a voice of an angel, but that doesn't mean that you're going to make it. So here's a person who had marginal talent, makes a $60,000 movie and makes $10 million. So that's what the story is, to me, is what's most important.
The biopic is already receiving great reviews, with many saying that Moore's personality and verbal dexterity is a perfect mix with Murphy's comedic talents.
Dolomite Is My Name hits theaters October 4th and begins streaming on Netflix on October 25th. The British Parliament will soon be on the sidelines for more than a month as the Brexit battle rages on. The UK government confirmed Parliament will be suspended at the close of business today through October 14th, but not before dealing a major blow to Prime Minister Boris Johnson's plans last week. Parliament not only blocked the Prime Minister from moving ahead with a no-deal Brexit, but they also stopped Johnson from holding a snap election to regain the majority. Johnson suspended the legislative body as part of the Queen's speech event to lay out his domestic agenda. Today, the bill forcing the UK to ask the EU for a delay to Brexit rather than crash out on October 31st has become law.
Floodwaters are being blamed for a deadly bus accident in Morocco that killed at least 17 people. The bus was on a bridge near the south-central region of the country when it was washed away by rushing water. Heavy rains in the area caused flash floods. Authorities searched for survivors in boats and in helicopters. Police say they rescued 30 people, but more may be missing. Authorities say the driver of the bus surrendered to police after initially fleeing the scene. He was injured, but will survive. Police say he will face a formal judicial inquiry, and the Interior Minister is on scene today, meeting with victims and rescue workers.
North Korea says it wants to go back to the table with the U.S. and resume nuclear diplomacy talks. But it says it will only sit down if the U.S. presents satisfactory new proposals. Talks between the two countries fell apart in February when President Trump rejected North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's demand for sweeping sanctions, relief in return for scaling back their nuclear program. The two leaders last met at the Korean border in late June to try and restart talks, but there have been no public meetings since then. Meanwhile, North Korea has carried out missile and rocket tests. Some experts say the weapons tests were a show of the North's expanding weapons arsenal.
Almost 1,500 deaths have been linked to two severe heat waves in France this summer. Two waves of record-setting temperatures hit France and other parts of Europe in June and July. Officials say almost 8,000 of the people killed in the heat were older than 75. The French health ministry says 10 of those who passed away died while working, most of them outdoors. Experts worry that these heat waves will become more common as the world deals with global climate change.
Taliban peace talks grind to a halt this week. President Trump says he canceled secret peace talks with Taliban and Afghan leaders. That meeting was set to take place at Camp David today, just 2 days before the anniversary of the September 11th attacks. In a series of tweets yesterday, the president said the decision was because of a recent Taliban bombing near the U.S. embassy in Kabul that killed a U.S. service member. He wrote, "What kind of people would kill so many in order to seemingly strengthen their bargaining position?" This comes after nearly a year of negotiations between the U.S. and the Taliban, with the deal reportedly close to being reached. The Taliban said in a statement, more Americans will die because of this decision. The Taliban has refused to negotiate directly with the Afghan government, which it views as illegitimate. Right now, it's unclear if and when the peace talks will resume. Astronauts are attempting to make homes with concrete for humans in space. Research shows that cement made in space can support future habitats on the moon and on Mars. In recent experiments on the International Space Station, astronauts made cement in microgravity for the first time. The cement was able to harden and develop in space. Astronauts are often vulnerable to dangers like cosmic radiation and extreme temperatures. So experts hope building infrastructure in space would help protect them.
A spaceship with no astronauts on board landed safely on Earth for the very first time. A Russian Soyuz spacecraft piloted by a robot landed early Saturday morning in Kazakhstan. The crewless mission was the first of its kind. A cutting-edge humanoid robot called Skybot F-850 spent the last 2 weeks conducting tests on the International Space Station after successfully piloting the ship to the ISS. The capsule and the robot have now been recovered for post-flight analysis. Using the robot sensors, scientists will be able to tell what humans in the capsule would have experienced if they had been along for the ride. They'll also use the data to make updates to the Soyuz rocket.
New research points to even more mystery surrounding what lies deep beneath the Earth's surface. Scientists from the University of Toronto found back in July that life exists and thrives 7,900 feet below the surface. Their mission, about 350 miles northwest of Toronto, discovered single-celled organisms that breathe sulfur compounds and require no sunlight, so they're able to survive in such depths. Scientists are finding more and more similar microbes in other deep spots around the world. Researchers say these depths provide a home for a population of microbes that is more extensive, resilient, and downright strange than they expected. Experts say exploring the area can help scientists understand how life might have started on Earth and other planets.
And NASA is vowing to land American astronauts, including the first woman and the next man, on the moon.
And it's taking a very unique approach to promoting the mission.
We'd rather be on the moon tonight. Say hello from the control room tonight.
That was a parody of Ariana Grande's NASA. If you couldn't tell, students of NASA's Johnson Space Center made the video as an educational parody to show the center's work to the public.
NASA says it wants to complete the next lunar mission by the year 2024.
Now taking a look at some of the top headlines from the world of gaming, joined by our colleagues at Cheddar Esports to break down the big stories. Happy Monday, Jimmy Mondel.
Happy Monday, Asia, and great news here for Team Astralis because they've won the Star Ladder Berlin Major with a record-breaking performance, ending Avant-Garde's fairy tale run in just 2 maps. They knocked out the top-ranked CSGO squad, Team Liquid, along the way. Astralis has won the last 3 straight major tournaments and 4 overall for the year. And with that win, the Danish squad now takes home a cool $500,000 and becomes one of, if not the most dominant team in Counter-Strike's history. Though they may need to spend some money to repair the trophy after Device, a player on the team, broke it. And now, with Berlin in the books, teams are looking ahead to the next major in the spring of 2020. Details and exact locations haven't been released just yet, though, so definitely stay tuned for that one.
Hi, Jimmy. So speaking of Counter-Strike, what has made it relevant for the past 2 decades, and why are some colleges now looking to borrow it from their esports scenes?
Yeah, it's been relevant for 2 decades at this point because really at its core, it's a simple game, right? There are 2 teams of 5 and visually speaking, it's easy to tell when someone goes down. Following that story about the college, though, however, is an interesting topic of discussion that I'm sure will be one that doesn't go away anytime soon. It's the optics of the whole situation, right? The game is presented as counter-terrorists versus terrorists, and it's a leftover of an era past. And it's really easy to see why colleges wouldn't really be keen on promoting said topics. However, the game at its core is not really focused on the violence of it all. You could take the same game and reskin it with unicorns and rainbows, and essentially it would be the same thing and equally as good to watch. So yeah, it's a little bit of a remnant from 20 years ago when games were a little more edgy overall and the scene at large was more focused on being gritty and like, games. But now it really doesn't matter. It's really for the love of the competition, and it's a good team game. 5v5, easy to understand. So that's why it stayed in relevancy.
Interesting stuff. I'm here for the rainbows and unicorn skins. Jimmy Mondel from our friends at Cheddar Esports. Thanks so much.
Of course, Asia.
And be sure to tune in to Cheddar Esports Monday through Fridays live at 5 p.m.
I think I expected to have at least one really bad roommate experience because everyone has those horror stories. But I actually ended up living with my freshman year roommate for we still live together. So I think that college ended up being kind of calmer in some ways and a lot more exciting in other ways.
Welcome back to Cheddar News. The Bahamas are reeling after Hurricane Dorian pummeled the area.
At least 44 people have died so far in the aftermath, and that number is expected to rise drastically. Joining us now from the Bahamian capital is Janelle Eli, International Communications Director at the Red Cross. Janelle, thank you for taking the time to talk to us here today.
Thanks for having me.
So Janelle, what are you seeing on the ground right now?
So I was in Abaco yesterday, and the scenes there are absolutely devastating. There are neighborhoods that are entirely flattened. There are other houses whose roofs are just twisted and mangled. They were really hit hard by the hurricane's wind. There are other houses that are standing, but they have severe water damage. Right now, a lot of people have actually left Abaco Island, and they're staying with friends and family in Nassau or on other islands. Some of them are staying in government shelters, and some have even gone to the U.S. There are still a lot of needs on the island. It's really clear that it's going to take a very long time for people to recover.
Yeah, these images are quite devastating. What are going to be the biggest roadblocks to recovery in the months to come?
Right now, people who have lost everything just have a lot of uncertainty. Recovering from a disaster is more than about a home that has four walls and a roof. A lot of people have lost their source of income. Kids lost their schools and are now going to be starting school in different areas. When you have to flee your home for whatever reason, you really flee your entire community. That's your friends, your security, your way of life. And I think that uncertainty is really weighing on people just as much as the physical needs.
Absolutely. So what is the Red Cross's strategy moving forward to help with aid and those affected?
So right now, people remaining on the islands still need things like emergency shelter, water purification, hygiene items, as disease is a mounting threat when there's a lot of water damage in places. Here in Nassau, we're really focusing on the urgent needs of evacuees. Even when people have lost everything, they need everything. They need hygiene items, they need new clothes, and the Red Cross has really been meeting those needs. Something else we're doing that I think a lot of people don't think about after disasters is that when there are teleconnectivity issues, people aren't able to get in touch with their family members and loved ones. And so there are still many people who just don't know if their brother and sister are alive, or they haven't been able to tell their grandparents in other countries or on different islands that they made it through the storm okay. So at the Red Cross, we have people who are trying to open those caseloads and really track family members, let them use our satellite phones or long distance calling so that they can get a little bit of that certainty back.
And for those people at home watching right now, what can they try to do to help those affected by the hurricane?
So right now, for people wherever you are in the world, check in with your Red Cross or Red Crescent Society to see if you're able to donate for Hurricane Dorian relief. But another thing I would just encourage people to do is take this moment to think about what your emergency plan is. Disasters can strike anywhere. This is the moment to think about what your evacuation plan is. What would you take with you? Learn first aid so you can help your neighbors. Disasters are a tragic time, but they're also an opportunity for people to think ahead for the next time something strikes like this.
All good points. Janelle Eli from Nassau, thank you so much for joining us on Cheddar, and thank you for your work out there.
Thanks for having me.
Congress is back from recess, and some lawmakers are now reacting to one rapidly growing threat to America's youth.
Our own JD Durkin joins us live from Washington, D.C. with more. Hello, JD.
Hello to you as well, Asia and Nora. A lot of news here on Monday out of our nation's capital, some on the oversight front, some on the geopolitics front, and some on the immigration front. But here's one of the newly emerging threats that seems to be getting more alarming by the day. And one by one, Washington's big power players are taking notice. The issue is vaping. More specifically, a rash of troubling new vaping-related lung illnesses. First Lady Melania Trump on Monday taking to Twitter with this note, quote, "I am deeply concerned," she says, "about the growing epidemic of e-cigarette use in our children. We need to do all we can to protect the public from tobacco-related disease and death and prevent e-cigarettes from becoming an on-ramp to nicotine addiction for a generation of youth." The tweet Monday comes on the same day that regulators with the Food and Drug Administration are putting the $38 billion company Juul on notice. Dr. Ned Sharpless, that's the acting director of the FDA, said this in a note Monday. Take a look. Quote, "The law is clear that before marketing tobacco products for reduced risk, companies must demonstrate with scientific evidence that their specific product does in fact pose less risk or is less harmful. Juul has ignored the law and very concerningly has made some of these statements in school to our nation's youth. There's an awful lot of uncertainty out there around the troubling numbers as the issue continues to baffle many scientists and doctors. Some people have reportedly gotten sick specifically after using marijuana concentrates that reportedly were sold with high doses of vitamin E mixed in. Some victims who have fallen ill have said they've only smoked nicotine products, but as happens whenever there is a new public threat, where there's not a lot of known information outside of the big, frightening, scary headlines in full bold, Congress begins to act. At least they begin to investigate and ask questions. So lawmakers here in Washington are now more and more sounding the alarms. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib of Michigan has previously said that Juul has avoided federal advertising restrictions. And Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy of Illinois, he's quickly become one of Capitol Hill's fiercest critics of the e-cig maker. He recently urged the FDA to more closely examine the company after he says they engaged in bad faith marketing practices. And Congressman Krishnamurthy also says Juul has demonstrated clear violations of government regulations, with claims such as Juul is a totally safe alternative to smoking and that it is less harmful than tobacco. Now, as for First Lady Melania Trump, we don't very much hear from the East Wing office on specific targeted issues like this. So Asia and Nora, the fact I think that her office would call for more government enforcement, that she's raising attention to this issue, could indicate that this could be a fight that the First Lady is willing to take up in the months ahead.
Great reporting. That is JD Durkin live from Washington, D.C. Thanks, JD.
Thanks.
Passengers hoping to fly on British Airways in the next 24 hours are pretty much out of luck. The airline canceled almost every flight.
A 48-hour pilot strike forced the airline to order a worldwide ground stop to its flights. Pictures show the terminal at London's Heathrow Airport nearly deserted. When you look at the FlightAware's tracker for British Airways planes, you can see there are less than 10 flights in the air around the world right now.
British Airways says it's offered the pilots union a nearly 12% raise for pilots, but it says it's not enough. The airline has up to 850 flights per day.
It is offering travel waivers to those affected. The strike will end by Wednesday, but another is scheduled later this month. So all this could happen again. And it may be paradise when you get there, but leaving the Greek island of Mykonos will likely give you a headache.
That's right. According to Air Help, half of the flights leaving the airport in Mykonos were delayed over the summer. That's the worst in all of Europe. The airports in Athens and Santorini are not much better.
The study also looked at the performance of airports in the United States. The worst performer in terms of delays was on the East Coast.
Yep, Newark Liberty only had a 63.9% on time this past summer. Chicago O'Hare, LaGuardia, and Denver International also posted major delays.
And summer isn't over yet, but New Hampshire is looking ahead to the fall.
The reason? Because tourism is booming. The New Hampshire Tourism Department expects to welcome more than 3 million out-of-state visitors who will spend at least one night there.
And these tourists are expected to drop a buck or two. The department estimates visitors will spend more than $3 billion across New Hampshire this fall.
With foliage views like this, it's a little surprising that fall is the state's second biggest travel season behind summer. The department's fall marketing campaign features nature activities like hiking and leaf peeping, along with dining and shopping. Leaf peeping. Austria's capital holds on to its title of the world's most livable city.
Economist Intelligence Unit looks at 5 factors to determine its annual index. Analysts say Vienna got near perfect scores in all but one of the categories. Those include stability, healthcare, culture, and environment, education, and infrastructure.
Cities in Australia, Canada, and Japan dominated. Copenhagen was the only European city to break the top 10. Several major cities like London, Paris, and New York sat much lower on the list due to higher crime rates and poor infrastructure.
WeWork wants to go public one way or another. Reuters and Bloomberg reporting over the weekend that WeWork, rather the We Company, as it's officially known, plans to push forward on an IPO and will launch its roadshow as early as this week. Now, that apparent decision comes amid mounting concerns from investors and analysts over the company's long-term viability and corporate governance. Last week, the We Company said that it was going to be looking at a far lower valuation than its last private funding round indicated and could shelve the IPO altogether. All right, let's bring in Baker Machado and Kristen Scholler over at the NYSE to help make sense of what's becoming one of the biggest Silicon Valley reversals of the year. Kristen, talk to us about the WeWork business model and how it could work if there is a recession looming.
Great question, Jill. That is the biggest question on investors' minds. And we did see the valuation cut in half last week to around $20 billion. And early this morning, the Wall Street Journal reporting that if this company does actually go public, the We company, it could see a valuation below $20 billion, a far cry from where it was just about a year ago. Its business model is the biggest question. Plus, you mentioned corporate governance and, of course, some serious potential conflicts of interest. All of this unveiled just weeks ago in its public filing to make its debut. The biggest question about its business model is how sticky is it? Do people really need these co-working spaces? Think about WeWork. It pays big buck to take out long-term leases. We're talking 10, 15 years, but then on a month-to-month basis, it actually rents out the space and sometimes just a desk to larger office space, right? And we know if the economy does dry up, really at a moment's notice, anyone could cancel that one desk that they're renting or even a larger office space. And plus, you think about the broader implications if the economy does turn sour, right? What overall impact does that have on the broader startup community? Is it going to cause some of these startups to go under and then not have that demand for those desks at the We company? This is the biggest question that has long been facing this company. Still, SoftBank has poured billions of dollars. That's that $100 billion vision fund that has invested in almost anything hot that's out there in the market. But there aren't necessarily a ton of U.S. investors that can speak more closely to why they got into this company from the get-go, other than SoftBank just throwing money at seemingly anything. And so it is a case where, as the R word does loom, and that is recession, there are big questions. What will be the demand for these desks and office spaces, especially as WeWork has already committed in many cases to 10 or 15-year leases on these properties?
Baker, do you think it's possible that this IPO may not happen?
I mean, listen, I would tell Adam Newman not to do it, but listen, they don't listen to me, so that's totally fine. Kristen hit all the
They're watching, Baker.
Yes, they're totally watching this. And listen, all the points that Kristen just said is the reason why they shouldn't be going, because you don't know what's going to happen with the recession. We know when the economy starts to turn sour, what's one of the first places we look at that in terms of where the market is at, and it's real estate. Obviously, if nobody is pumping money into sitting at these desks, if the economy is bad, then nobody's going to want to go to a WeWork. So that's obviously a huge place that nobody's going to look at. So why not wait until after a potential recession? Well, we know SoftBank has dumped in way too much money right now just to cut it loose and get out of here. So they're obviously just hoping that the business can stay afloat based on basically the Saudi money that's being pumped in there for the next couple of years. But I guess one way you could prove to investors and people like me out there that they do have the money to make it work and they are recession proof, as Adam Newman has said, is just to make the space cheaper and more flexible so that way it can stay recession proof. Adam Newman says that they are recession proof because they've basically weathered downturns in other countries, and that's proof that WeWork will be able to make this all work. But guys, we've seen with Uber and all these other big, highly unprofitable IPOs this year that it's going to be very, very difficult out there. But at least with Uber, they know in the next few years, autonomous technology is going to make their lives so much cheaper. What's it going to do to make WeWork's lives cheaper? Real estate's going to be more expensive, and they're snatching up all these expensive locations.
I mean, Kristen, forget WeWork, as Baker was mentioning, some of these other IPOs. What happens to some of these cash-burning, VC-backed startups if there actually is a recession?
It's a great question, Jill, and I think that is why we're all asking, is the company recession-proof? Because it, like many other startups, right, is losing tons of dollars. I mean, in WeWork's case, hundreds of millions of dollars it lost just in the first half of this year, and there is actually no clear path to profitability. And so that's why we see the valuation cut. That's why we see a potential offering that may eventually be shelved because there may not be the demand there. But for all of these different firms going public, like an Uber or Lyft, right, those two IPOs certainly have not been received well in this market because we don't necessarily see a path to profitability laid out so clearly on top of hundreds of millions of dollars in losses, in some case like Uber, billions of losses. I think the other thing that's important here, like think of WeWork. It's very sticky if you're in a big city, right? You've probably interacted with it. It has this like cool startup vibe around it, definitely. But it's kind of like a Netflix or an HBO if you're a millennial, right? I mean, you can basically cancel on a rotating basis. And that's the concern, that there just isn't that sticky factor. I think that's why this company is going to have a hard time proving that there is a path to profitability, because again, at any time, someone can decide to join, to leave, and then to join again.
Yeah, it's all about the beer on tap. That's the cool fact.
By the way, guys, I mean, Uber last month said they lost $5.2 billion in the last 3 months. And guys, WeWork is going to be just as expensive, if not more than that, because all of these real estate locations that they're snatching up, you know, the old Lord and Taylor place that's right down here on Fifth Avenue, those are expensive places. So if Uber's losing $5.2 billion, imagine what WeWork would do.
All right, Baker and Kristen over at the Nicey, thank you. Kristen, before I let you go, what are you working on for opening bell this morning?
Jill, we've got a huge show coming up. Joel Mitnick, he's an antitrust partner at Cadwalader and a former FTC lawyer. He's going to join us for more on this fight ahead as state AGs do get ready to take on Google and Facebook. So stick with us for that.
Kristen Scholler will be watching. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jill.
Okay, today dozens of state attorneys generals are expected to announce a bipartisan investigation into Google's practices. It's one of multiple antitrust probes against big tech companies. Investigators will look at Google's impact on advertising markets and potential harm to consumers. Joining us now, Joel Mitnick, antitrust partner at Cadwalader. I got that right? Cadwalader, and former FTC lawyer. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so here's my view on it, all right? I think these antitrust investigations are a horrible idea, okay? And I think that basically what they do is they destroy tech companies, and look what they did to Microsoft. They basically derailed Microsoft for however many years. Microsoft never really got back, and this will basically now just wreck Google. That's my takeaway.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you, and I'm delighted that you raised Microsoft, because that was actually where I was going to go. If you look at the companies that are under investigation, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple, the one company that you don't hear about is Microsoft. Microsoft, of course, was a company the government tried to break up in the late 90s, and I think that fast-changing tech markets correct themselves And even if they don't, new technology comes along and displaces the old technology.
But what I will say about that is Microsoft is now the most valuable company in the United States. And so it's hard to say that it derailed it because now it sits atop all of these other companies and is not part of this big tech moniker that is being investigated by so many different agencies.
So I think it was derailed in its focus for a short period of time. The point that I'm trying to make is the company doesn't have any market power today. Nobody's talking about Microsoft having market power. And to the extent it did have market power, in these high-tech markets, there's a good argument that market power is transient.
But Joel, so you were an antitrust lawyer.
Yes.
Were you a defense or a prosecutor?
Well, in most of my career in private practice, I work on the defense side.
Okay, fine. So you mostly agree that technology solves these things. And then now the Google executives will just spend 25% of their time every day in an antitrust investigation, take their eye off the ball, and somebody will come up from behind and...
I agree to an extent, but I've said before here as well, these investigations are not pure antitrust investigations. It's very confusing in the way the AGs are talking about it. Only part of it is going to be about antitrust, and that's focusing on market power, it's focusing on acquisitions and things like that. The other part of this investigation, which is an entirely different legal regime, is privacy. Both New York and Texas, looking at Facebook and Google, have announced the first thing that they're looking at is consumer information. And that really has nothing whatever to do with antitrust.
But for Google's case, right, it does seem to be centered more around its dominance. Facebook, certainly with privacy. With Google, we're looking at search and, of course, the massive fines that have been levied against it in the EU, billions of dollars in the past few years. And then in addition to search, obviously its dominance in the ad market. And then it just becomes a perfect storm. They can gain more and more business, more and more dominance. And what I think is important here, John mentioned in the intro, this is a bipartisan investigation that is expected to be announced later today. Equal number of Republicans, equal number of Democrats. What sort of weight does that hold that this is a bipartisan effort and not just one side of the aisle?
I think that's actually very significant. So if I were these companies, I would be looking at a freight train bearing down on them at this point. You had just a month or so ago 10 attorneys general brought an action to stop Sprint T-Mobile. They were all Democrats. The fact that we now see bipartisan consensus, presidential campaigns all talking about antitrust, privacy, big tech, I think these are going to be real investigations.
I mean, how
doesn't mean there will be
broken
outcomes.
is. I mean, how broken is this stuff right now? I mean, we can argue about it being politicized, but it takes years now to put through a mega merger, right? Like, I mean, I get reasonable people can agree or disagree on, on whether two telecom companies should be able to merge, but at least give them a decision in 6 months, right? I mean, it just seems every aspect of this stuff is broken.
This is a totally different type of investigation than AT&T Time Warner, for example. That is a transaction where you have to come to the federal government to ask them to walk away from challenging. In that case, they didn't, and there was a challenge, and the government has the leverage to stop the deal.
It went on forever.
It did go on forever, but this is going to go on forever plus.
So what are the consequences potentially for Google and other tech companies? Do they run the risk of getting broken up, or do you think it is smaller fines that face them down the road?
I think breakups are fanciful. It's an enormous lift for an enforcement agency to break up. You saw that with Microsoft, it didn't work. It did work with AT&T. That's the only time.
And that was a mistake too. And that was a mistake too. I mean, the funny thing about it is you can look back on every one of these breakups and you can't find one where the decision in hindsight was the right decision.
Not sure I agree with you about that
good.
on AT&T. I think with AT&T breaking up and the Bell Labs being able to send its R&D throughout the entire ecosystem of telecommunications, I'm not sure we would have had the digital revolution that we've had. I'm not sure we would have had cell phones, or at least not on the same time period.
It's interesting because under the Obama administration, I mean, he basically took a hands-off approach with these tech companies, right? Let them grow to be the colossal forces that they are today. And so what changed for Democrats that now Democrats want to come forward and potentially break up big tech, or at least fine them tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars?
Well, it's interesting. I think we live in the world of populism today. And I think one of the things, I think the turning point really had nothing to do with antitrust. I think the turning point had to do with Cambridge Analytica. That is when the public woke up to the fact that big tech can do scary things. That led to both privacy concerns, and I think it led indirectly to all the antitrust investigations that we have now.
All right, Joel Mitnick, we got to leave it there. He's an antitrust partner at Cadwalader and former FTC lawyer. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Investors pushing the S&P 500 to a near all-time record as U.S.-China trade negotiations restart next month and central banks around the world unleash new stimulus. Joining us now is Art Hogan, Chief Market Strategist at National Securities Corporation. Art, we have seen some momentum on the trade front, which does seem to be propelling markets today. What is it?
Well, I can tell you this, the tone around trade has gotten a whole lot better. So, very much like the month of May where things looked awful, the month of August felt that way as well. And then right at the end, it feels like, okay, we need to get back to the table and start talking about not having a mutually destructive long-term trade war. And I think that both sides have said, interestingly enough, hey, let's have another sit down in Washington. And China actually agreed to that. But the interesting part is they agreed to it in October, so they can put the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China behind them. They can have a national celebration, not show any giving in to President Trump, and actually try to sit down and get something hammered out.
Yeah, Art, we're in a non-fundamental market right now is how I view it, right?
Very much so.
Basically, every tweet that comes out, are we going to have a trade deal? Are we not going to have a trade deal? Ultimately, you could argue people should get in right now, avoid the noise, right? However, then there's the fear maybe the president will actually follow through and do something truly destructive in terms of international trade. Where do you come down on that?
John, that's such a good question. And the hard thing to know is that I agree with you. I think we're one tweet away from triumph or tragedy any given day in the market. But I believe in an election year, this is not a president that's going to want to ride this battle all the way to November of 2020. I think there's going to be some choreographed good news as we get into the end of this year that says, hey, we've got a deal and it's pretty darn good. They can spin it any way they like, but I think they want to get out of this because it's actually affecting poll numbers. We're actually at a point where this is not going to help.
I do think the word choreographed is key there because from what I saw in that Politico story in terms of what concessions would be made, China would agree to purchase some ag products. We know farmers have gotten killed in this, but basically then the U.S. has to back off these restrictions that it's put on Huawei and also the $250 billion worth of tariffs that are expected to rise here in the future. So it doesn't necessarily sound like that is a great win for the U.S.
Well, it's kind of a mini deal when you think about it. So Huawei, you can look at a couple different ways. Is it a good idea to actually use that as a tool in this fight? And for security reasons, yes. But for the products that they're already being serviced by U.S. companies, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I think it's the October 1st increase in tariffs that China's really trying to push back against, and that's showing up in their data as much as our data in terms of uncertainty
This
around.
intellectual property thing is unbelievably annoying to me because whatever deal we reach with them on intellectual property, they're going to violate. So it seems like spending all of this time fighting about the IP stuff, it's ridiculous. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, plus that was an add-on. We started this as a trade deal, right? Hey, they don't buy enough of our stuff.
Right.
We'd like you to buy more of our stuff.
He keeps saying in his speech, we can't keep having them steal our intellectual property. It's a bit like me saying, like, we can't keep having bad weather in December. Like, I mean, it sort of is what it is.
Right. And structurally, I think the entire planet would like China to deal with everyone on a more equal basis on trade. Functionally, though, how are you going to get to do that? It's still a closed economy, and they're going to do what they're going to do, right? So I think it's the best we can hope for is some type of change, or at least a promise of some type of change in the way they deal with companies, the technology transfer, for example. But yeah, you're right, John. I think it's, you're pushing against a rope here if you really think you're going to structurally change the way China's doing business that they've been doing for the last 30 years.
I wonder too, how are the dynamics of the global economy changing? Because we see virtually every central bank around the world, from New Zealand to Turkey, to the US, to the ECB in Europe, to the Bank of Japan, moving in to lower rates. In some cases, further move rates into negative territory like the ECB. How does that change the dynamics of trade and the economy?
Well, that's a great question. I think one of the things that, let's say, look at this three ways. If we could get the tensions around trade behind us and not escalate with anyone else, by that meaning, let's not start a trade war with anyone else. Let's not put tariffs on French wine and autos. I think that would be a great accelerant for the global economy. Second thing is, I think the ECB, regardless of what they do this week, is going to continue to work in the wrong direction of monetary policy. Negative interest rates don't work. So regardless of what we hear, I think that the new regime, when Mario Draghi leaves, is going to have to take a good hard look at actually how monetary policy works, because what they're doing and what Japan's doing is not working.
Is that going to take the markets in the U.S. to new highs?
I think the markets in the U.S. will probably go to new highs, but not unless and until we get China trade behind us.
I mean, but the big issue really is that all of this disjuncture and uncertainty around the trade deal is now causing corporates to make decisions for 2020, and it's basically creating paralysis. Every one of our large advertisers that we've talked to is like, well, we don't know, we want to see what happens. I assume that that's happening in purchase decisions and CapEx and all of that stuff. Is 2020 going to be bad? No, most people don't really have the conviction that you have that there's going to be a choreographed action, although I think you're probably right.
Yeah, the problem with that is, yes, we hope that there's going to be a trade deal, but until we see one, as a company, I'm not going to build a $100 million plant in Ohio. I'm not going to make a big change in my CapEx. I'm really not going to invest in the future until I know what the future looks like, and we don't have any visibility into that.
Right, and that's why the Fed has said it's cutting rates, because of this uncertainty and a lag in business investment.
SEC school, I thought that I had to jump into a sorority, and that's how I was going to make my friends. And if I didn't join a sorority, I wasn't going to make any friends. It just wasn't in the cards for me, and it was just going to be added stress on top of school. So I didn't join a sorority, and surprise, I still have friends. People still like me and still want to be around me.
All right, let's talk some We Company. WeWork's owner reportedly planning to move forward with its investor roadshow despite concerns about the latest where this stands, because I think there are a lot of questions as to whether or not this IPO is still going to happen.
For sure. There were reports that emerged kind of towards the later half of last week, kind of showing that WeWork was looking to take a pretty hefty haircut on the valuation that it was going to seek in the IPO. So last valued at the start of the year at $47 billion. Our reporting was, on Thursday that it was maybe looking at a little over $20 billion. So, for the late stage investors like Japan's SoftBank, that was going to be a pretty decent discount. But then, and then on Friday we kind of made some more calls, and it looks like, the plan at the moment is still, despite concerns around the valuation, that they're still planning to launch their IPO, sometime this week. All plans subject to change, and for sure there are a lot of discussions going on, but that's our understanding of the latest state of play.
How much is the concern or hesitation endemic to WeWork itself, its business model, et cetera, versus the uncertainty in the macro environment, appetite for investors, kind of lessening for unprofitable companies? What is the balance there?
It's a really good question. I feel like a lot of the concern is quite WeWork specific. Obviously August was not a good month for stocks, but overall, people in the market consider the IPO window to be pretty supportive. We've had a lot of strong IPOs this year, with Beyond Meats and Zooms, companies like that. And WeWork, there's a lot of scary numbers around that. And if you're an investor in Uber and Lyft earlier this year, which were other high-profile loss-making IPOs, like you're hinting at, you have a little bit of reluctance to go back in for another company with steep losses. You add to that concerns around the corporate governance, the fact that Adam Neumann, the CEO, is going to be retaining control through his superior voting class shares, the fact that there's been these kind of self-dealing stories that have gone around about him renting properties to WeWork that he owns and pocketing money from that, the lending arrangements that he's had. It's a lot of things that have made investors a little bit concerned.
Well, I think too, it's kind of late to the game, right? I mean, we've already seen a ton of growth companies go public this year. So think about it. If you're a pension fund, if you're an endowment, if you're Fidelity or one of these big institutions, you've already had the opportunity to get into a lot of